All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fight. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we are going to be going over every single fight from UFC Fight Night. Magny versus Prates for that was a UFC Vegas 100, the 100th card at the Apex. And to do that with me, breaking down these fights, my good friend, the Ohio player, now the second most likely person to wear a very large CP chain. Chase Parton, how you doing, brother?
I am living. This was such a great time to have Vegas 100, man. I can't the Apex was lit. I can't lie. It was good. Why did I
Yeah.
say Vegas, Nevada, wherever it's at? I don't know what I was saying. The Apex 100. Excuse me. Long day.
Yeah, all three correct though.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, but yes, long day here as well because Chase, I will usually do our plugs at the very end, but I will say that got a video out before this stream, still was able to do the rewatch to make sure that I had all of these fights fresh in my mind. Didn't even get the backlights on, but we're on now. Long day indeed, but we are here, brother. I'm feeling good. Hope you are as well.
You know, I can say that I'm feeling really good, especially after Saturday. I will say it started a little slow, not because of the fights, and we'll get into that. But I
Okay.
wanna I wanna say off the bat, because you're gonna ask, how did I enjoy it? I
Yes.
think the promotion itself, they let us down for one of the greatest Apex cards because they wanted us to hear Paul Felder and Kamaru Usman fucking talk. Not Paul Felder. Was it Paul Felder? No, who was at the desk with him?
Fitzgerald.
No, no, no,
Oh
not the
yeah, yeah,
desk.
at the at the
At
oh at the
the
desk. It was Kamaru Usman, and oh no, but yeah, no, it was Rashad Evans, Kamaru, Karen Bryant, and who was the fourth?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. But either way, they wanted us to hear them talk so much over that fucking event. And I think it was really a letdown. They didn't expect any finishes, it looked like, because this card they had more promos than fight time. I can tell you that.
That was definitely a note that I had, was that the funniest part about all of this was the amount of filling that they had to do and how many times they had to hype the main event because of all of the knockouts, all of the finishes. There were a bunch of finishes on this card. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that anybody would have anticipated the volume of finishes that this card delivered. For sure, this is another one of those. I was talking about it on the watch along, how people were having their opinions. We've got some negative Nellies, I would say, out there. A couple of them in the Discord sometimes as well, saying that the cards are not that great. Oh, we've only had 300 been the only good card this year, whatever. Like, these opinions. I'm like, this is the sport, and these cards can sometimes very much surprise you. So this is one that absolutely delivered in a big way that you would not have necessarily expected it to. So it's like what I said on the watch long, I'll say it here as well, is that if you are a more casual fan of the sport, maybe you only follow a certain fighter, maybe you only want to see fights in a certain location or something like that. I don't know what goes into your decision making process in that regard, but if you want to follow more casually, then yeah, you can skip it. Go enjoy your Saturday night doing something else. But if you are a fan of this sport and follow it as in depth as we do in order to keep up with everything, you are seeing future stars being made on these cards. And this is a great example of that very thing happening.
I think what's also unfortunate is that because they're not like this isn't UFC a number, right? UFC pay-per-view and then a number. It's like people aren't gonna remember, oh, do you remember the Neo Magny and Carlos Prates card? Like this is Apex 100, so I think that does kind of help it right there. But when it comes to like memorable fights and memorable cards, like these are the ones that you actually have to be around for to see because the regular people aren't watching these fight nights. They even say it themselves. Like I only catch them like in the highlights or the day after. It's like they're not witnessing what is happening in real time. Watching every little thing in the moment is really key, especially when cards like this come around.
Absolutely. So to get into it, before we do anyway, we're going to be going over every single fight on here, some of them longer than others, many of them short. If you've got anything to ask or to comment on that we are not talking about at the time, something outside of the fight in question at the moment, just throw it into the chat. We will come back to it a little bit later on in the stream. Plus, we will be talking about a couple other things after this card as well. So stick around for all of that. But to get into it and start it all off, we have Melissa Mullins versus Claudia Segula. Segula making her debut in the organization. What did you think of this fight, sir?
Can we start before the fight?
Yep.
What did I think? I thought Melissa Mullins, and I heard it. I heard all the talk. Oh my gosh, what is this? Who is this? And I want to point out she was a very attractive woman. Melissa Mullins is a good looking woman. And to point out, she is one of, I believe it was three English female fighters in the UFC. That number was crazy to see. Think about that.
Yeah, for sure. With the amount of fans that they have in England, that is pretty wild. Yeah.
So I want to say that, and then I wanted to also bring up, and I'm not even trying to make a topic. I just wanted to point out that when Claudia walked out, something looked off to me. I don't know what it was. I want to say some plastic surgery had to been done along the line,
Hmm.
but
Interesting.
I something was off there. And
Okay.
and not to say she wasn't also a very pretty young lady. They're both very attractive. Good deal. Great fight. It ended in a KO. Isn't that crazy to think about for women's fights?
Yeah.
But Melissa Mullins really came out here and did her thing. She got her in a position that was like kind of funny to watch. Like she kind of had her pinned down, gift wrapped kind of deal, and just like kept pounding her. And women's MMA, you're just watching it and you're like, oh, no way this is gonna end like this because they don't get finishes like that. And shout out Melissa Mullins being one of three English, female fighters being able to finish.
Absolutely. So to touch on your first point there about, again, we don't have to go into this in too much detail, but I also thought that Miss Mullins is an attractive lady. However, this was a funny moment on the watch along because they did the promo package and it cut between Mullins and Segula. And at one point, it was slightly jarring. Vitz King made his comment was rather a little bit of an outburst because it was just a jarring transition only because, and I did not realize this. I've seen Mullins fight before. I did not realize this at that time, but seeing it in the promo, it became more clear. Mullins does have the little slight lazy eye, just or lazy is when it's a little bit droopy. I think wandering eye, I guess, is what you would call it. Just a little, just a little bit though. It's within acceptable range. It's within.
I got you.
But so Vince can keyed in on that, and just if you go back and watch the VOD, it was a pretty funny moment. But yeah, I mean, Segula also attractive lady. I don't know about the plastic surgery aspect of it, but either way, it was a. I mean, it really was a little bit of a one-sided deal, unfortunately, for Segula making her debut. Now, Mullins did miss weight, so that is something to keep in mind. We always have to make that a clear point that missing weight is not cool. So not great for Mullins to do that, but Segula really just didn't show much in this fight in general because this was a second round finish. So the entire first round went through. It was kind of a little bit of a boring first round until Mullins ended up getting a very nice trip. And then she got some nice ground and pound at the very, very end of the round. So, I mean, it was up until that point, you had about 4 minutes of really not too much going on, except the other note that I had was that Segula's head movement was kind of wild. She bobs her head in a very specific way. It's somewhat akin to Quagmire, or if you're old like me, she looked a little bit like a 90s fly girl. That's a reference that you might not get, Chase, but trust me, old heads will understand.
Yeah, I think this was unfortunately, the UFC with some of these women that have like these low records, they do take chances. So, say someone like Alice Ardoyan, she comes in here and you can see the potential. You can see the skill that she can have on a good day, kind of deal.
Sure.
Segula, I think this is another deal. With again with Alice, she had like a one fight contract thing, got another fight contract after that one. I think this is maybe one of those one fight contract kind of deals, and Segula may not be back because she just didn't look impressive at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to your point as well about the finish, I did think that it was very good of Mullins to recognize that she had the wrist and keep controlling it because that was kind of what that wrap was there that you were talking about. She had it down, getting the ground and pound, really nice. But then also it kind of was a handshake agreement almost between her and Segula because Segula was not doing anything to try to get out of it at that point. She went down rather easily, I would say. So it's unfortunate for your debut. Perhaps there were some jitters there, but a performance like that, I do think you're pretty accurate in your assessment. She didn't show anything in any real regard. I mean, the only real note that I could say in her favor was that she did try to come out in the second round a little bit more aggressive, but it was uncontrolled aggression that was easily countered by a more skilled Mullins. So, yeah, unfortunate performance in that regard. But what was fortunate after the fact was that we got a little bit of a nice breakdancing show. So how about that?
Yeah, actually, forgot about that. We may come back to touch on her sweet moves, but I think I want to also point out that Miss Segula was on social media. I don't know which one it was, but she was very upset after the loss.
Mm.
She had a video where she was, clearly upset. And so I don't know what she was saying. I don't believe I actually watched it. Even if I did, I don't think I would, understand. But she took it bad. Maybe that means she was actually trying, which that's not a good sign. Or this just like wasn't her night, and maybe she's better than that. Something along those lines. Um, I do believe that although weight miss Melissa Mullins, she looks good for this weight class. Like this isn't like Molly McCann where this is a meatball, kind of deal. This is somebody who's in shape that could compete, and I think something's good coming for her here soon because I mean, listen, the opponent obviously was not that great, but the next opponent, I think Melissa Mullins, she should show like I'm decent.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting with her because in her, I believe it was her debut that I had seen, and I thought she looked really, really good in that fight. Then she gets pretty roundly defeated by Nora Cornwell. And now she comes back with another nice win over lesser talent. So it kind of is one of those territories that's a little bit shaky ground, I would say, as far as like what my full on perception is going forward. But a performance like that does not hurt the perception in the slightest. So very good for her in that regard. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where she's early on enough that it remains to be seen. So hopefully she can go out there and do it again.
I I agree. And I want to make this point also. And Elite really didn't get behind me when I made this statement in the Discord on the call. English women are finishers. Molly McCann, she's got a finish in the UFC, don't she? Here we go, Melissa. There's only 3 of them, so 2 of them can do it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who the third is off the top of my head now.
It's
It's
even been a UFC history. I don't think it was active.
no, that is it really? No
I
way.
I don't I'm telling you, it said
That's kind
one
of
of
wild.
3 English UFC. I didn't say current. Like, I don't think it said current on there. That's why I
That's
was so
wild.
confused. I was like, "There's no way." I'm thinking like, "Okay, Molly, her, and I don't fucking know another one." So,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
whatever.
Odd indeed, but well, I mean, then I guess this is a wake up call for English women. Get your skills up and go fight and go finish. So there you go. But the only other thing that I did want to touch on this one was that she did receive her black belt in the cage. Uh, Mixed feelings about that in general, but I mean, maybe those trips were enough to warrant it, or as we've talked about before, probably stuff she did outside of that performance warranted it, and she just got it in the cage. But how highly do you rate a black belt from whoever gave it to her? I guess is the question, and that's a little bit of a loaded statement, perhaps, but it's more of a question than a statement.
Yeah, well, we could, this fight can be over with. I mean, the black belt. Who knows how she got it? She got one slick trip, and maybe the coach was like, "There it is. That was what I was waiting to see." And then now she earned it. Who knows?
For sure, for sure. All right, well, I guess that'll do it for that one. Shout out to everybody in the chat, by the way, Anakin, Elite, and Checkmate. What's going on, all y'all?
Oh, that's
Let's
how you say checkmate. I was about to say chick. I was just gonna call him chick, but checkmate sounds better.
There you go. Get it right. All right, moving on. We had Antonio Tricoli versus Trayshawn Gore. Standing guillotine in under 90 seconds. Wowzers indeed. What'd you think?
That's not even the problem. Okay, that's not even like no,
That's
no,
not the
no.
problem.
No, no, no. That is the problem, and like I'm glad you framed it in a way to give Trayshawn Gore his flowers because at the beginning of the fight I'm thinking I'm seeing the Twitter highlights. Everybody's thinking he's some crazy dude. Don't let him get a hold of your neck. Like, all right, okay, sure, 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 sure. Tricoli does not let that happen with his wife in the corner. Anyway, that was my thought before the fight. Then the fight happens and I watch a 6'5", listed on ESPN, 6'6" on the tail of the tape, get a standing guillotine applied to him. Not only does it get applied to him, it was crucial. And the dude that was like, I can't imagine how it like it physically. I'm just actually there's nothing that I can say because it just doesn't add up. How he throw two strikes and then get subbed on your feet, and you're like a whole foot taller than this dude, Antonio Tricoli. Wow, man, you just really let me down. And I had faith. I'm not gonna lie. I thought you were gonna come strike and knock this dude out, but no, it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, he really just left his neck right on out there, and Trayshawn said, "Thanks, I'll take it." You know what I mean? It was one of those situations where he was in that bent over, doubled over position, I guess fishing for a takedown of his own. But what didn't even really look like he was even committed to that. He was just in an like he was just there. Yeah, this was a bad look for Tricoli for sure. And, I mean, again, I do want to put it more on Trayshawn than Tricoli, just only because I'm happy that Trayshawn did get that win. He's been a little bit shaky starting off. It's what we said last week, where it's like Trayshawn Gore is still finding his footing, but he needs to find his footing already. You know what I mean? That's what the assessment going into this fight was. So I'm glad that he did in that regard. But yeah, I mean, this was a very bad look for Antonio Tricoli, most definitely. I did appreciate, though, as well, that Trayshawn got the knee up for the leverage. He saw that he had it locked in 100%, and he very much committed to it. So, it's like, look, sometimes the easiest road to victory is the one that you should take, and that was exactly what happened there. So good for Trayshawn to have the awareness.
Yeah, and like I'm sure we've said, and maybe me and you have not specifically said it, but guillotines in the UFC, they don't normally work out too well. You normally
Certainly not
jump,
standing ones.
well, standing ones or even jumping it and like pulling guard, like you
Right.
normally don't really see a finish that often like that. And this dude might just have grip squeeze that can do it. It takes a special type of finisher, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was saying on the watch along, it reminded me very much of the AJ McKee versus whichever one of the pit bulls he was fighting over there in Bellator, when he basically turned the tables on the pit bull who is known for doing that. So it's something that you will see occasionally elsewhere, but it is very rare at the higher levels in the UFC. So very nice for him to be able to pull that off. And I'm glad that he's able to stick around. He's a warrior for his Lord and Savior, Trayshawn is. And I guess he said he was losing friends over his lack of wins for some reason, fickle friends perhaps, but I'm glad that he is able to get back in the win column and hopefully keep his friend circle.
Listen, I'm not even gonna like tread lightly on this. I think this is maybe karma. Antonio Tricoli, you are a dude who popped in the sport and now you're
Mm,
getting finished two times in a row. I don't care how much faith I had for you to go to decision with Shara and or whatever that case may be, or how much faith I had for you to like stand with this guy and maybe finish it. But you get what you get in this sport, and that's just how it goes. A lot of people look good at a lot of different times, but it's just not yours now.
sure. And I also can just add to that. Very recently talked about on a YAMMA episode. This is the same man who beat up the ex-husband of his current wife. So, perhaps karma in many ways. I mean, I don't know too much about him aside from those things, but the things that I do know are not great things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So.
I didn't want to go into it too much because I didn't know the facts. I'm glad that you came in here and added more context to it because yeah, you don't deserve to be a great guy in the sport. So sometimes life deals you lemons.
Yeah, well, certainly not in the spousal department, but otherwise, maybe he's okay with that. Maybe that's just he can ride that out and just be a happy guy
True.
otherwise. But
I
perhaps you can go do it somewhere outside of an octagon.
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's actually a great point. Not outside the octagon. Where would he go from here? He could definitely go to the PFL. One. I mean, they sound like they love shit people and they treat them like shit. We'll get into that later. So, um, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, right on. All right. Well, I mean, that's all there really is to say about that one. Quick, early
Yeah,
finish.
I was gonna say I'm trying to. find stuff to say really because there's just so little that we could speculate, not speculate, but talk about in the fight, and then there's more that we can speculate outside of it because the fight was they were all so quick. They were all
Yeah,
so
yeah.
quick.
Exactly, and that's, sometimes it's the best when we, are able to get in and get out, so I'm happy about it. We were on the watch along saying, "Man, it felt like we didn't even really do our jobs, we were done so early," you know? It was like, "You're done by 9:30, it feels weird," yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'll reiterate is like these fights were great. When in the moments people put on great performances. I think the promotion just let us down with the pacing. That was that's
I
all.
mean, I think that it just has to be that way because 'cause they're locked into the time slot to an extent, so, I mean, they have to
You
pace
know,
it weird, I don't know, I guess they just didn't expect to have that many, so yeah, you're right, they had to play a couple promos a couple more times, people on the
well,
desk.
and like so earlier I was thinking like, what would the solution be in my opinion? Because I can surely talk about it, but like what would I do to change it is the way that I'm thinking about it. And like why okay, have your time slot, but then get the fights going one by one, and then the leftover time, do the post show there. Just that be the post show. Like in the allotted time that you have left. I don't know why it has to be a separate, oh, go to ESPN now, and now you gotta like go watch the post show or the interviews. Like, why can't you just have that shit at the end of it? I'm sure they do that in other promotions. I swear I used to watch TV and at the end there would just be filler of just like people walking around in the warehouse or something because it was over. Like
Yeah, I mean, there might be something to do with like the way that the events are structured, like the flow of running a live event. Having a little bit of a background in that, there's probably something to that aspect of it. And then there also might be some obligations with the network. That would be at least the logical explanation in my mind. Off of speculation, but yeah, I mean, either way, I wasn't mad about it, man. This was such a nice hang of a card for me and Vitz when it came to the watch along, just because it was like nice, easy, clean fight, very quick, and then we're chilling, we're talking. This was more of like a feel good vibe as opposed to having to sit every second locked into a very neck and neck gritty fight, or worst case, like a really boring fight where you're like, why am I even watching this?
yeah, 100%.
So
And so, going into the next fight, Cody
sure,
Stamann, Damon Blackshear. I want
yes.
to just jump right into Anakin's comment. Blackshear with an impressive win. I think all three of the submission attempts that he had, like I would have tapped in 3 seconds. Like those were killer. Like he was like, that goes into my next point. He was putting so much deadly submission pressure on Cody Stamann. And it's just unfortunate that now Cody Stamann, to Anakin's point, has 3 losses in a row because I saw right here. This was the fight where I was like, I see the heart, I see the want of like a win. Like this is a fighter right here. But like Antonio Tricoli, it's just not your day. And some days, the life is just not fair, and 3 losses in a row, and maybe two or one of them isn't deserving if it was a decision or whatever. But this one, you really just got outclassed. Like it was a great performance by Blackshear.
Absolutely, yeah. He looked fantastic in this fight. I mean, Stamen had some nice combos early. I do want to give him a little bit of credit for his boxing. I guess he's got a boxing base, and perhaps that's the better way for him to to move on forward. Because I mean, he looked really nice in the very very early part of the fight, but Blackshear just well rounded all across the board. I mean, those knees that he was firing off, multiple flying knees, like it was nothing. I mean, he was just getting himself up there, one after the next. I mean, like that was one of those things that you look at. Like a lot of times you'll see a guy throw a flying knee, it doesn't connect, and then it's like, okay, that was just something that he threw to mix it up. It's just one of the multiple things that he's going to be having in his arsenal, keep the other guy guessing kind of thing. No, Blackshear was throwing these knees, and he was trying to get the timing down to actually land it. So when he did land it, bingo.
I think I want to counter because I think at the end you saved yourself there because when he did get it, I think a lot of people they do go for him, like you said, and they don't, or like the spinning elbows, spinning back fists, and they just spin themselves out of their shoes. I think Blackshear was getting to the point where I was watching, like, you gotta stop throwing that flying knee. Like just go strike with him. Like that's already the third time you've thrown it. But then it actually landed and it worked. And like you said, he finally got the timing for it. And I think, make or break, like it's a make or miss type of thing. Like you gotta actually execute at the end of the day.
Right. Well, that would be the counter too. Is that yeah? You don't want to go back to the well so many times that quickly. He did throw them in pretty quick succession. So I mean, like or quick sequence. So I would agree with that. But I do think that it was partially to get the rhythm down because Stamen was moving in decently. So it's like he had to get himself into the right position to actually make it effective. But I'm glad that he was able to actually do that. So it was really nice explosiveness on his part. Finally got the one through, and then the combo after that had Stamen shooting for dear life there was pretty impressive as well. I think he's just got a really good fight IQ. I like the way that he fights. And you're right about those submission attempts. I mean, like he had a couple of them that looked insanely tight. It was I think that first guillotine it might have been slipped partially because of the blood that was coming down from Stamen's face. A little speculation there, but it looked like it made sense in the positioning. But yeah, I mean, he had the good IQ to immediately go for the back after that, gets the rear naked. Beautiful performance.
Yeah, 100%. Like, again, not too much more to say. This happened round one, guys. These aren't like these weren't grinding finishes. These were
Yeah.
just walk through a guy. Like you'll see later, we saw walk off finishes all night. Like they just walked themselves into promos for the entirety of this fucking card.
And I want to throw one last point in on this one because it goes back to what
Yeah,
we were just talking about. So when it comes to those knees, in his post-fight interview, Blackshear had said that he was studying tape and knew to throw the knee because of the overhand right that Stamen throws. So, it might not have been the right idea to keep throwing them consistently as quickly as he did, but there was a logic behind it. And I think that that's also a sign of a high IQ fighter. I mean, this is Mr. Twister we're talking about over here, one of what, 5 or something like that? I mean,
yeah,
so
true. Forgot about that.
yeah, so I mean, Damon Blackshear, I think, is a guy to watch out for. I like the way that he fights, and if he continues fighting smart like that, I mean, again, what we were saying all in context, right? I mean, you shouldn't necessarily go back to the well over and over again very quickly, but if you have a well-rounded skill set like he does and utilize it all effectively throughout the course of the fight with advanced knowledge of your opponent. I feel like sometimes these guys literally do not watch tape. And it's like, bro, I mean, like if you know that he's going to circle out left, if you know that he's going to drop his hand when he throws an overhand or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there are certain patterns that you can pick up on if you actually do that. I feel like sometimes these guys just don't. This is an example of a guy that ended up paying off for him. So
Yeah, 100%. It kind of sucks that he's in the bantamweight division. And guys,
killers.
yeah, I'm actually seeing like the bantam, it's already stacked, but like it's gonna get even more. Like that is like the Wild West, I think. Like we're coming up on some crazy matchups. Like Peyton Talbot's got to fight here soon, and that's a dude that's not even ranked still. Like so, it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, we've talked about it a couple of times, but man, bantamweight and flyweights, man, these guys are really where the competition is at right now. It is extremely cutthroat at the smaller weights.
Well, and it's not even a like I know I'm trying to say it in a way that excludes like the 45s and 55s, but these are the people that are going to eventually move up to like those weight classes. Like we're
Good point too.
watching
Yeah.
very young bantamweights, like 22, 23, 24. They're not going to be bantamweights when they're 32 or whatever, if they make it that long, whatever you want to say. They're going to go up or at least attempt to go up once or twice. That's a given. So these are going to be sprinkled around these lower divisions for a really long time. And it's a really good spot.
Absolutely. No, agree. I agree 100%. All right. Well, then let's keep the train moving here. On to Charles Radke versus Matt Semmelsberger, Chuck Buffler, Blood Brother Pride. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
I love Chuck Buffalo. It's such a goofy nickname for a guy who takes himself very seriously. It seems like we were talking about on the watch. Now this has nothing to do with the fight, but I gotta say this. Radke gives me weird vibes. He gives me vibes of a guy that's a little bit more dangerous than just a guy who's dangerous inside of the cage. I'm just putting it out there. I could be completely wrong. Perhaps he's the biggest sweetheart in the world. I'm not even talking about his pattern of saying outlandish shit after his fights. That's not even it. I'm just talking about straight off the eye test, the blood brother pride across the chest. I'm just putting this out here as he's a guy that I got my eye on. As there could be some police activity at some point in the future. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and we're just so like when I left this fight and I listened to him in his post-fight speech, and then at the desk, later on, like the interview or whatever, I'm thinking like, Charles Radke is like a real down-to-earth guy. This is a me type of guy, and maybe that says something, But
Perhaps.
yeah, so this fight, getting into it,
yes, please get
I
into it.
I did also like. It's funny that you brought up the blood brother pride thing, because this was the one time that I noticed it. Like it stood out to me. Like, what does that mean? Blood
I
brother pride. Okay,
I want to know. I want to know. I mean, it's one of what we said on the watch log. It's not full on any negative thing, but it's
yeah,
it's right there. It's adjacent. It's adjacent, dude. It's not an 88, but it's just
yeah.
it
So
feels close.
anyway, the fight. This one
Yes.
absolutely had less of anything that you could talk about too. Like
Right.
whether you want to say that this was early, this dude Matthew Semmelsberger had nothing. He had nothing. He just
Yeah.
stood there and had a face to get punched. Like, oh my gosh, it was so bad. Like, think about it. Listen, getting knocked out, not cold, right? This was like a TKO in 7 landed strikes.
Yeah.
Like, that's like virtually, that's like crazy to me, because you're not like going out. You're not getting put on your back in like one combination. No, he just like walked up and just like beat on you for a second, and the ref was like, "Yo, what are you gonna like do? Like, what the fuck?" Like,
Yeah, pretty
so
much.
it was real quick, and Charles Radke walked away with the dub. And back to his post fight speech and all that stuff. He sounds like he took the loss to Carlos Prates very seriously, and that he wants to wipe that off his record. And we talk about all the time, you got to change the perspective, you got to change the narrative. Charles Radke come out here and get a finish with 7 strikes. I mean, hey,
That
good enough, man. 51
certainly
seconds.
does. Yeah, certainly does change the narrative indeed.
It
Absolutely.
changed the narrative, and you didn't drop a slur.
What a magical thing to get through an entire post fight without slurring in any capacity. I mean, still swearing, but at least they were acceptable swears. So good job, Mr. Radke, on that one. But yeah, no, look, man, left hook Chucky over here. He lands it twice, follows up with a right. I mean, goodbye Jedi. There's
Yeah.
really not much more to say. I did appreciate that the Buffler wants money. Give me money, he says. Bunch of bitches in the welterweight division, he says. Let this man cook. I appreciate all of that. That's the thing too. Like even if he is a little bit extreme, I fuck with him though. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's to the point that he does just kind of have a way to capture your attention. I think that is why they gave him somebody who's 11-7. Like
Sure.
they knew we wanted Charles Radke come out here, get a win, get on the mic, say something stupid.
Yeah.
But now that you just reminded me, this is welterweight. Charles Radke's, he looks like a fucking lightweight. Like, he's like not huge at all, and he doesn't have like the proportions of a really, like, now that I've obviously fought
Ah.
Carlos Prates, but like, I don't know. I don't know why I thought he was more of a smaller guy, but
I think he's just a slightly shorter, but he is broad though. So I mean, like, you can see it in his arms, see it in his upper body a little bit. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's yeah, I mean, I agree with you though. I do think that he is a guy that they think can be a little bit of a character. So there's
Trevor Peak, type
sure.
of, yeah.
Yeah, there's a sellability there for sure. So, and I'm saying, I mean, like I fuck with the guy. I just hope that he wouldn't want to eliminate my bloodline is all
Yeah.
all I'm thinking of there. But yeah, no, great win. I mean, really, that's at the end of the day, this was a really solid, very quick performance. Semmelsberger did not have anything, as you said. He really didn't. I mean, he looked locked in, but it's like it was that like almost, I don't know, like other his head was somewhere else kind of locked in, at least from the body language. Perhaps you can interpret that 2 ways: before the fight, after the fight. It sort of lends itself to that interpretation. So yeah, not great there, but a very nice win for Charles Radke. So keep doing what you're doing, hate free.
Yeah, well, actually, the last thing I'll
Yes,
say
please.
is with how easy of a win this was and how much Charles Radke seems to like money, I would love to see him very, very quickly back in the cage. Like,
Yeah,
there's no reason you can't listen. You had a full camp. Don't let it go to waste now. You only landed 7 strikes, brother. You better get back in there in the next Apex card. Like, main card it up. Like, come on.
that's right. Make the octagon where the buffalo roams. All right. All right. Fucking loopy today. All right, moving on. Let's go to how do you say this fucking first name?
I have no
I get tripped up on this every single time. I'm looking right at it. I still can't. It's
Ilazoo, I
yeah.
guess.
I think it's yeah. Eliziu. I think it's Eliziu Zaleski dos
Be
Santos.
easy.
It's the first name
Zaleski's so
gets it.
easy though. Zaleski
Sure.
DeSantos is easy.
Absolutely. Well, and also I have dubbed him Easy S. I think that this is
Yeah.
a good nickname for him. It makes perfect sense and it rolls off the tongue. So Easy S versus the newcomer Zach Scroggin coming in on 1 week notice and missing weight. Unfortunately, I really can't fault him all that much because of that aspect of it. It was a bit of a whirlwind thing. I'm usually very hard on weight misses. This is a little bit of a unique circumstance with that, so I don't really, I can't be too hard on him for that. I also can't be too hard on him because he got his ass fucking kicked. So
Yeah, it sucks that like I get on ESPN when I'm making my picks and I look at these pictures right here that we're seeing and I say, "Oh, this Zach Scrogan guy looks like shit." Like, never mind. Like, they're like, and he's a plus 500. Like, he's probably just gonna get whooped. And eh, unfortunately, you're watching at this point and you're like, "Oh, there's been 4 finishes or whatever, 4 finishes right now. No way, no, 3 finishes at this point. No way does this get finished. Like, Zach Scrugen's going to come out here and pull off a masterclass somehow and go to decision. And just no, like, just not even close. Like, you would believe that there was some hope for some people in these fights, but most of them were the most one side. This was the most one-sided Apex card ever, actually. Like,
yeah, it's true. This was majority of the victories, even the ones that went to decision. A lot of them were pretty
one was
well.
a 30-26. Like, Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
yeah. There you go. But yeah, so I mean, really, this is another very, very quick one, very, very one-sided, as Chase said. Scroggin threw out a front kick, but didn't really commit to it, which he very well paid for it, but you got to be confident in your striking. That's really just what it comes down to against a more grizzled veteran like Dos Santos. There, he sort of put the kick up, but didn't really fully extend the leg. I mean, I could kind of see that he was close to the cage, so it was an odd time to even really go for a kick like that. But whatever the case may be, man, I mean, have better octagon awareness, I guess, is the response to that. So Dos Santos returns with a right hand, and it just clipped him. I mean, it was just one of those deals. He went down pretty quickly, so I'd be a little concerned about his chin if he does end up coming back. Probably not ready for the big show, perhaps. I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can look at all of the things that we saw there, but none of them really paint a great picture of Zach Scroggin.
I wanted to go ahead and interact with the chat. Ali, I do believe he should deserve another chance. Not deserve, but I think he will get another chance because he did the company a favor, showed up on short notice, attempted to make weight. Like, he didn't make it, but he was at least trying. You saw that he wanted to be there. And Anakin with the Carlos Liao versus Zach
Yeah,
Scrugen,
I saw that.
you're crazy. Do you
That's
want this dude
wild.
dead? Like, oh my goodness. Like, wow. But so yes, I do believe second chance will come for him. Unfortunately, he just got finished. So it's gonna be a while, but full camp, we'll see what happens. It's probably not gonna be a great opponent. And the last thing I want to point out is that Zaleski dos Santos did a very cool dance at the end of it, and I want to learn to do that whole routine, and I can do that every time something cool happens in life.
Another finish, another great dance. He was doing capoeira. Melissa Mullins was breakdancing. It was a great night for moves in more ways than one. So very good. I appreciated that as well. I am a fan of capoeira. There is I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. But the dude who was on The Ultimate Fighter, who fights out of Ecuador, who also practices capoeira. I wish that guy had done a little bit better in the organization because capoeira has its place, within your mixed martial arts skill set. And it is very cool to watch just in dancing form. So awesome there. And the last note that I have is that is 11 first round finishes for Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. So pretty cool.
Why do I feel like he's 37? That's pretty old, but I
Yeah.
feel like he just has the look of somebody that's been around for so long. Is that right? Yes. Okay. 2015. Yeah, he's been here for a good amount of time. So the ceiling for him probably has passed, or maybe he's making a second wind. I don't know. This is a bigger weight class, so things are possible. But
Yeah, I mean, that it's one of those that's one of those questions that really is like a philosophical thing as far as the fighter goes. You know what I mean? Because I wonder about those kinds of things as well. Like when it comes to a person in that position, a little bit older, a little bit later in the game, but racking up some nice wins and finishing. What is your intention? What do you want out of continuing to fight? Like, are you actually trying to make a run, or are you fighting just to get paid? Is it, pride thing? There's a lot of different ways that you can go, a lot of different avenues you can take with your mentality as a fighter. So I guess it really comes down to Dos Santos to make that decision and continue on down whatever path he so chooses thereafter.
yeah, I can tell you one thing. I enjoy watching it. So if you want to keep fighting, I will continue watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. Good stuff for Dos Santos. Easy S. I like it. I'm going to try to make it stick. All right. Well, moving on to what I would say is probably one of the lesser fights on this card, more so just because of how finish heavy this card was. But this is Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I believe is how it's pronounced. But I always say Kowalkiewicz because how it's spelled out. But Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Denise Gomes. What'd you think of the fight?
I feel like I don't remember this fight at all, and that's probably because not much was going down. Um, and like you said, yeah, this was definitely the low point of the card, and it's not even just because there was a bunch of finishes and that just like in comparison, like this was just a mid fight on any card. So I
Well, I would
yeah,
push back on that slightly. What I would say about this is that the first round was a little bit boring. Um, I think that the issue was that it was unfortunate how much clinching was going on in general in this fight because Gomes does have nice hands when she lets him go, but she just ended up A, either being tied up or B, being the one tying up Kavlkiewicz. So it's like, you got to be confident in your striking here. There's a couple of fights where I have a note about that basically, where it's like, you know, if you are in the dominant position in the clinch, you are well within your ability, unless you're really being locked up, with the hooks or whatever. Like if you can break off and get the elbow, break off, get back out to distance, break off and land some heavy shots. I mean, like you're in the dominant position there. You are dictating the pace of the action more so than the person being tied up. So, get off and make it more competitive. I mean, because she was landing decently when she was not in those positions. So, I mean, I think that there is more there from Gomes than was shown in this fight. So I understand the perception of this fight being mid. But it was only mid because of that element, I would say.
yeah, I don't know. Unfortunately, I like I said, just not too much. I think the clinch work that you brought up is probably what rang most of the bell, but on the feet, I can't tell you. I want to say even like closer to the end, I was thinking maybe there was a round that was close, but by the time the judging came, like yeah, it was unanimous and
Yeah,
nobody really stole away in my opinion. So it was kind of just who the judging is going to pick at that point.
right. I mean, Kavlkiewicz, I think, did just get outclassed in this one a little bit. I mean, even with all of the clinching, a lot of it was offensive on Gomes's part. So, I just think that Kavlkiewicz is as politely as possible. I think that her time is coming to an end in this sport a little bit. I mean, but she's also one of those fighters that has sort of been in that end of her career position for quite a while, but still just sticks around. I guess she really does enjoy fighting, and that's great. But you've got younger fighters like Denise Gomes coming up, more striking out of her, more power in those shots when they were at striking distance, and the control was more so in her favor. So really, on all metrics, it was Gomes's fight. It would have been nice to see a little bit more dominance out of her because of all of that, but I it really just ended up being new versus a little bit past, I would say.
Yeah, I get that.
So, and also a testament to how good this card was finish wise. This was the first fight. This is the featured fight on the prelims. This was the first fight that went to the third round of the evening. Just to put everything in context for everybody.
Yeah, went to the third round and finished, the third round. So
Right, yeah, it went to decision, but I mean, every fight up until that point had
yeah,
either finished in the first or second round. So
yeah,
there's your
and,
little
and to point, no fluky finishes,
right, yeah.
no doctor stoppages, no weird I'm quitting type of deals. This was 100% okay. There was one ref stoppage you could claim, but he was going to lose either way. But
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I heard you mention that. I didn't really like jump on that. It seemed okay to me on that one. If anything, actually, I think the one we're about to talk about there, it might be a little bit more of a case for it, but the same basic concept. What you're saying. I mean, yeah, it's like you could have let it go a little bit longer if you wanted to see the guy get his ass kicked a little bit longer, but
yeah,
So anyway, well, let's get into this one then because I quite enjoyed this performance. This is Dusko Todorovic versus Mansour Abdul Malik. Malik, we saw on the Contender Series. I thought he looked very great. You thought that he looked good, but he was fighting against a guy who did not look so good. So you were a little skeptical. What was your perception of him after watching this fight, Chase?
well, it's funny you bring that up because now that I was waiting for you to like say that I wasn't too high on him. And maybe that was the case at the time because the opponent was very bad. And I did remember at the time, like, oh, this is that guy that fought the opponent that was really not great. But I also do believe that this guy wasn't that great either. And
Oh, you're pulling a share a bullet on me right now. I feel like I'm listening to myself.
no. I'm not, the only reason I said that is because you brought that up. I wasn't even gonna say that he wasn't that good or that I thought that until you brought up in comparison to the last guy because there wasn't the last guy at least was able to get some strikes off and like last an entire round. Maybe I think they maybe even went to the second round or whatever in the Contender Series. This guy here, yeah, it was just another scenario where he got punched really, really hard. Malik can punch really, really hard. He does have some interesting technique at times, but it seems to work out for him. And if he lands and puts you on the ground, and he actually is able to like get some ground and pound, like it was cakewalk.
All right. Well, I appreciate that you put your wrong opinion on me, so thank you for that. But
Yeah,
I will stick with my right opinion, which is that I don't know. What I have in the notes, and this might sound slightly crazy. I will take this upon myself, and it's not for the same reasons, but I get the feeling that I got when I saw um I Jesus Christ, I have
Mara
yeah, I know. I'm going into a fucking seizure moment here. Fucking uh Duncan. What's it? Not Duncan.
Christian Leroy Duncan, RoboCop.
Not Christian Leroy Duncan. The fucking the English dude. Why the fuck am I missing his name right now? Just fought Danny Gay.
Leroy Murphy.
Thank you, Jesus Christ. Yes. Okay. Wow, that was
Yeah, you're good.
that was quite a robotic breakdown there. There you go, another L for the compilation. But yes, Lerone Murphy. I'm getting the same basic feeling that I got about him as I got about Lerone Murphy when I saw some of his fights earlier on in his career. It's not for the same reasons, but it's the same basic feeling. Like I just see something in this guy. I don't know why, but I mean, you're seeing. I guess you're seeing why.
No, I agree with you. I definitely when this dude's getting into the cage, I know that there's something about to go down. I definitely see what you're seeing. He's very athletic and he's able like he's an imposing figure. So I think that's going to get him a long way, especially with the striking that he has. You keep putting cans in front of him, he's probably going to keep knocking them out. And he's 7-0 right now. There's no reason to rush him up against somebody that we know he's going to like have a tough matchup with or like that's going to wrestle fuck him. Just get him to 9 or 10 and it's like, yo, he's on like a 4 or 5 knockout streak in the UFC. Then we give him somebody that's like, a little higher up in the competition.
I could see that being the trajectory. To your point about Dushko Todorovic not being that great, I mean, I think that some of his decisions in this fight definitely lend themselves to that assessment because really on top of Abdul Malik having very heavy hands, I mean, you could hear the sound of the hits. I mean, the smashing that was going on was very audible. But one thing that I noticed was that Todorovic, he basically went like he did this twice. He went for the leg and essentially trapped himself by sticking with the leg hold. Like he was holding the leg so fervently that Malik is just smashing hammers on him. That's one. Then the huge knee from Abdul Malik lands directly up Main Street. Very nice. And then Todorovic, I mean, at that point, he was doing it out of desperation, but goes for the leg again and again traps himself. So it was like, yeah, I can see that maybe the technical aspects need to tighten up just a little bit for Mansour, but really there was just kind of some poor decision making going on the other side as well. So it might have made him look a little bit better. I don't care. I don't care. I like the way that this guy fights. Just keep your distance from Sean Strickland because they train together. Just make sure that you have a sizable amount of space between the two of you, and you will do just fine, Mansour Abdul Malik.
Yeah, and actually, you made a great point that Sean Strickland was there, and I wanted to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
Everybody, and I saw it on Twitter too, it wasn't the Discord. They seemed to go crazy that they saw Sean Strickland smiling, and I was like, are you guys like ridiculous? This dude's always like smiling because he's fucking weird. Like, I don't know. I don't know. That was a weird moment that I thought, like, am I in a different universe here? But
yeah, that's very strange. I would have been more surprised seeing Charles Radke smiling. You know what I mean? But no, yeah, I mean, yeah, that is a little odd. Strickland, he laughs, he smiles, he's
dude,
joking
like
around all the time. What are you talking about?
he's not Alex Pajeda. Like, I mean,
even he's smiling now. I mean,
exactly.
he more played that up for character before that, but you see him doing that ASMR bullshit.
Yeah.
He's doing all kinds of goofy stuff now. So yeah, I mean, that's a little odd take for the Twitterverse to have, but yeah, they are training partners, and that means they are training with Eric Nixick, one of the best coaches in the game. So,
Gosh, I'd love to say he's on every card now. I love it. He's got somebody around everywhere.
well deserved, man. I'm telling you, that camp is very, very talented, talented group. I mean, maybe not necessarily up there with the fighting nerds, but I think that there's a couple of cases to be made in there.
Yeah, we'll talk about them later. But I do agree. Yeah, Eric Nixick, man, he the way that he talks about his fighters and the way that he talks about how he engages with his fighters, it's very key that one, he's able to separate, what he does and what he's telling us, and how he operates. But it's two that it's effective in what he does.
Absolutely, yeah. And you make a great point about that. If you ever listen to his cornering, he's absolutely fantastic in the corner. Like, I mean, just the way that he is able to navigate fights from the coach's perspective, I think that he has just an extremely high fight IQ from the coach's perspective and is able to impart that in a way that makes sense for the individual fighter. And that's really, I think, the mark of a great coach.
100%.
So, good stuff. So keep doing what you're doing, Abdul Malik. You're going to make a believer out of Chase one of these days, I swear.
100% will, man. You keep knocking people out.
Yes. All right. Well, moving on to one of the other rare decisions on this card, but a much better fight, I would say. This is Luana Pinheiro versus Jillian Robertson. Jilly girl getting the job done. What'd you think of this fight?
I'll obviously wait for us to talk about the main attraction for this fight, but I want to go ahead and state that it is actually funny that if you look at the pictures right here, they made a big deal. Jillian made a big deal that Luana wore her staple red and white uniform or whatever. So Jillian had to come out in the black, and then she was like, "I'm wearing black for her funeral." Blah 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 blah. It was pretty cringe.
Yeah, I heard something about that. I thought she made that choice, but okay.
Yeah, it was pretty cringe. But she did come out here and win. It was again not a great fight, but it was
no.
Oh,
this was good, man. I liked this fight.
It was fun because there was goofy stuff going on, like the 12-6 elbow to the upside down opponent. which was great. We don't know if that was there was nothing in the rule book that said she couldn't do that, but I'm sure someday they're gonna look back and say we needed to have a rule against that because that was crazy.
No, I mean, I think that there is because I think that that's like the pubic area or where like the genital region. I think that that there's wording about that in the rules because I mean it's close enough, especially on a woman. It's close enough to the organ, and it is. I mean, I think that what the referee Chris Tione was saying is that you got to watch the spine. So I guess that there's a case to be made that that is the base of the spine, perhaps. But it was right down Satan's alley there. That was we're talking about these 12 sixes that are being utilized now. That was certainly a unique use case there for the 12 to 6 directly to the asshole is pretty much what happened. And Luana Pinheiro making an audible yelp that could be heard on the broadcast from it. So interesting visual there.
Yeah, the way that I heard it was like if you stepped on a fucking chihuahua or something like that, dude. You could tell pain was struck through her body when that strike landed, and it was like, okay, this fight wasn't horrible, but it wasn't. I don't know. I don't know what it was missing. I think it was just that meme moment that carried it in the first for me. But I maybe think a unanimous decision is kind of crazy because Luana, she didn't look horrible. Like,
No, she did not look horrible. That's why I liked this fight, actually. I thought it was a very competitive fight overall. It was a fun fight for multiple reasons, but I enjoyed this one for mainly two reasons, aside from the 12 to 6 we just talked about. One is that Robertson is ferocious when she gets her hands on you. She is really, really adept at finding the openings and then capitalizing and staying active. That's what you really want to see. It's like a lot of times, going back to the Denise Gomes fight, you get in these clinch situations and it's stalemate, it's stall, it's nothing, it's neutralization. And that's boring as shit. And no one wants that. Jillian Robertson will get you, and she is actively working towards the next position. She is going for it whenever she has her hands on her opponent, and that I appreciate greatly. So that I think it really is her biggest strength. It's certainly not her striking, but on the other side of the equation, Pinheiro does have some decent striking, and in that second round, she was able to get some of that off, and she actually got her takedown defense a little bit short up in the second round, made that round very competitive, gave her that round for sure. I'm seeing Elite in the chat here saying that he gave the first round to Pinheiro. I would disagree. I think that Robertson did enough in that first round to swing that one as well. I think the 29-28 makes sense to me. Which I mean, I think that there was one, yeah, it was one that 29-27 Pinheiro, which I thought that was a little bit fucking wild. But yeah, I mean, I thought that this was a really nice display of a style clash here based on what I saw, and I think that Robertson really did a decent job. I like the way that she fights. She was a little hard on herself during her post fight, saying that she thought that she should be finishing these chicks. She's got title aspirations, this and that. I thought it was a really solid performance. I liked it. I'm a fan.
yeah, I think I might have clocked out on the post fight for her. Maybe I went to the bathroom, but that's good to hear. I mean, not a lot of people they're vocal about what they want to do in the sport. Like, you have people who come out and they want to come for the belt and they make it known. And how long's Jillian been here? How old is she? I mean,
She's been around for a
29.
while. She's got the
She's
most
29 though.
finishes. Yeah,
Got the
yeah,
most
fair.
finishes, bro.
Well, she's got the. I believe she has the most submission finishes in women's MMA, right? Or in the women's UFC, I believe.
It does look like she's got a lot of those, but she hasn't had one. Okay, well, 2023. Okay, that's not too far away. But either way, it's good to hear that somebody wants to make a name for themselves. That's not Whaley or Valentina or Rose. Like these are just other people who want to come for some glory.
Yeah, absolutely. The legacy fighters cannot stay forever, so the next wave has to eventually come crashing in, and Jillian Robertson wants to be on that wave. So, I think performances like this are fine for that. I mean, of course you want to see finishes every time. Obviously on a card like this, it stands out like a sore thumb because of how many finishes there were. I think if this was on a more standard bag of fights, a card that was a little bit more varied, this would fit in as just another solid fight on a solid card.
Yeah, I wonder where she could have fought. Maybe Canada last week?
Oh,
Like,
really? Right? We were talking about that. Absolutely. Kind of crazy that she did not. But training out of Port St. Lucie out here in Florida, though. So shout out to her for that. Local. Appreciate that. One other note that I did have that I thought was funny, in addition to the 12-6 to the asshole, was Dean Thomas is one of her coaches, I guess is her primary, perhaps. Uh, him yelling when she was in ground and pound position to hit her with the John Jones is pretty wild.
yeah, I heard that one too. It was funny, but I still think the fact that she utilized the elbow when Panero was upside down and it was just straight butthole action, man. She's a real deal killer for that. Like that's how you know she's locked in. That's all I gotta say.
Absolutely. No, I'm with it. Um, and then the last thing, and then we will move on from this one. But I thought that I heard, and I mean, maybe I misheard what I thought I heard, but if I heard correctly, Robertson does not do any strength and conditioning. That is insane as a professional fighter. I mean,
Mm.
she must be doing low weight, high reps because she's got a real strong back and strong arms. So I mean, again, I think that that's a pretty insane thing if that's actually true. I mean, maybe that's just something that she told to the commentary team in her pre-fight interview or something. But I believe that that's what Bisbing said, and I was like, that is just insanity. She utilizes her technique as her only weapon of choice, and that's like just
Bruce Lee style, you know?
I guess so, but yeah. So anyway, just an interesting note about Jillian Robertson, if true, and also I guess the fact that she smokes like a chimney. Go out there and get that blunt, girl.
All right.
All right. Moving on. Cortavius Ramius versus Gaston Bolaños. Mr. Bologna out of Lima, Peru. What'd you think?
I thought Cortavius let me down.
Agreed.
When I out of him and Malik, this was the one. I was like, this is the one that's gonna impress you. You guys thought Malik was impressive? Right here, he's gonna show you guys what's up. And the fact that he got dominated, like looking at the numbers, the fact that he got 4 takedowns, I'm surprised that he wasn't able to like utilize that earlier or make that more effective throughout the fight because 30-26 when you had more control time. I mean, like you just had to do more.
Yeah. So, I mean, to the point that you started with, I had it in my mind pretty much how it actually went. I thought that it went to plan in my estimation as to who was going to do better as coming off of the contender series. I had Malik as the one that would be dominant, and I thought Cortavius was the one I was a little bit shakier on. So proven right in that regard. But really, I think that this was just a solid performance from Bolaños. And also, I mean, to say that he got completely dominated is a little bit false, only for the fact that he did drop Bolaños at the end of the first round. So I mean, that swung that round for him. I would say. I mean, it's kind of crazy though, because that's like one of those things about the judging of the sport. Like up until that point, I would have given that round to Bolaños, but he did get dropped, so that just automatically swings it. I guess so. I mean, like depending on how you look at it, right?
Yeah, it should, but the judging didn't reflect that. Ain't that crazy?
Yeah, that is pretty wild. I mean,
It maybe
there.
has something to do with that they didn't technically count that knockdown. Like maybe at the end of the round they went, did they count that knockdown? And then they were like, ah, nope, all right,
Well, they
nah.
don't see the numbers though. I mean, they don't see the tallying of the actual scores and all that. I mean, the stats. So
They
I guess
gotta
it's
have
just
like a clicker guy right next to him or something, and they lean over.
they heard it. They heard it in their left ear, right?
Yeah, got
Fair
to.
enough. All right. Well, whatever the case may be, there. I mean, I thought that Bolaños did really nice in this fight. Not knowing all that much about him, I guess that he's fought before, but I don't immediately recall his fights.
Marcus McGee, he got knocked out
Oh, so there you go. I
in
mean,
January. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess that's why Marcus McGee is a tough first guy to go up against for sure. That's a dude also to keep your eye
But
on. But
actually, what that wasn't his debut. Sorry, he went up against Aaron Phillips.
okay.
He beat him. Whatever.
Yeah, so I again, he didn't stick out to me at the time one way or another. So
Yeah.
whether it's a performance that won or getting soundly defeated by Mr. McGee, I just didn't have him clocked in my head. But to his credit, I thought he had really nice kicks in this fight. It didn't even look like he was really throwing them with full force, but they landed with some heavy thudding smacks. So obviously there was enough power on them, which I appreciated. Ramius was going for it in this fight. He's obviously athletic. He dropped Bolaños in the first, whether they counted it or not, or whatever, however the judges wanted to look at it. He did get it dropped. I mean, that was there. So good on Ramius for doing that. Got a decent slam in the second with some good grappling, but Bolaños was able to turn it all around. Not giving a fuck that his jock strap was all the fuck out there, and
Dude, that was
kept
hilarious.
kept on trucking.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't stop
Pause the
somebody for that.
action.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pause. Actually, speaking of a pause in the action, there was one of the fights. I'm trying to think what it was, where the ref like paused it, and he had like a stern warning to somebody, and
yeah,
it
the
was like
Pinero fight probably
it,
the for the cage grab.
yeah, actually, yeah, and it was like way after, like, why didn't he was like, "Don't grab the cage again." It's like, yo, they're not even near the cage anymore. What are you doing this now
Well, she had
for?
done it twice. I guess I should have mentioned that. I glossed over that in the notes. But yeah, she did grab the cage once when they were on the ground, and then got a sneaky one in there when they were on their feet. So I guess it was like just when the action was at a .2 break, he thought it was appropriate then to give the hard warning. But the commentary team did say, and they made a good point about it, that when you do that, you're also stopping the momentum for the fighter who did not commit the foul. So yeah, a little bit of a mixed bag when the referees do stuff like that, because I do appreciate when they do that in certain contexts. You know what I mean? Like give them the hard warning so that it's like definitive that you're going to get a point taken next time it happens. That I can appreciate because I'm okay with more points being taken in this sport when people are blatantly committing these fouls. We've talked about it plenty of times on the show, just fouls left and right that don't get called. So
And I actually want to make a point just because it popped in my head to your point that this stops the momentum of the fighter who didn't commit the foul. It's like, imagine if this was one of the scenarios where the ref has got to be like, "Hey, no foul," and then he has to walk him over to the translator, tell him he needs to, and then
it's a good point.
you don't even know what they're saying to each other.
Sure.
So it's
Yeah,
important.
you
That's
make a
how it
solid
goes.
point. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, all of that being said, just to go back to the Ramius fight here, um, this is another instance where I think that Ramius didn't trust his hands enough. I think he relied a little bit too much on his wrestling, which obviously he's pretty skilled in that department. You can tell that he has the fundamentals of what you're supposed to do. It's just it didn't work out for him when he was attempting certain things. Like there were a couple of mistakes that he made that really cost him. And if it's not there, you have to be comfortable with throwing your hands. I mean, especially in that third round when it was, it might have been, I guess, on these judges' cards, not as close as I would have thought that it would have been based on the drop in the first. But in your own mind, at least, you got to be conscious of where you are in the fight. And if you know that you already dropped the second, you got to be going out there in that third round, really trying to gun for it. And if your wrestling is going to fail you, you got to be comfortable with your hands. Just looked like he wasn't putting enough emphasis on the striking.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And this is debut. He just came off the Contender Series. I think it was this season too as well. Um
Yes, yeah, just earlier
so
this year.
this did kind of look like maybe a stage fright kind of deal because he just wasn't active enough. He was doing, he looked like he was trying to utilize a game plan, obviously enforced wrestling. But it, like I said, he just didn't do enough, and like you said, he just didn't commit to what he was trying to do.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And this is a good example of what we talked about during the Contender Series when it was airing, when we were reviewing those fights. You don't know based on the Contender Series how they're going to fare actually in the organization. Uh, Good on both sides of that coin. We saw Abdul Malik do his thing, and then we saw Cortavius Ramius do his thing. So it's always going to be different from Contender Series going into the actual organization. You saw both sides of it here.
Yeah, and I think one last point I want to make, just because I love seeing all these low records in the league. I know the UFC is supposed to be the mecca. Once you're established, that's where you go. But I do love that the league is looking like it's expanding. You know, we don't have just middle of the road fighters that have or that are just 15-7 and like that's their rookie, you know, starting point or whatever. Now we're getting people who are actually young and they're going to get the UFC advantages way earlier into their career. By the time they're 25, 26, 27, their record is going to look a lot better because they're facing, you know, the better competition. They're getting better enhancements to their game, whatever you want to say, because they have the UFC at their disposal.
For sure. So I guess the question then is, do you think that Ramius comes back fixing some of the holes in the game, maybe a little more confident, perhaps? I mean, not based on this performance necessarily, but just having now been in the big show, does he come back and adjust to the point where he can live up to being in the UFC?
I think it is smart for him to objectively look at this fight. Okay, I did drop him in the first, so my power carried over. You know, objectively, I was able to get him down 4 of 6 times, so my wrestling is still, you know, at least sufficient for where I'm at now. I was able to hold him down for 6 minutes. I just got to be more confident. You know, not have yes men around you is very key in the camp. I'm not sure what camp he comes from. Let me double check.
I think he might also be.
Pura Vida BJJ.
Yeah, is he also a Florida guy? He might be. I thought I
But
heard that. Maybe I'm confusing him with someone else.
but yeah, so it really just depends on what he does going forward and how he analyzes this loss. You know, you got to be able to take losses to be great.
Absolutely, yeah, most definitely. I think that there's probably a place for him. It just, like you said, it just depends on the version of him that shows up next time.
It's bantamweight, man. I mean, there's not. Listen, I said the Wild West, but this town really ain't big enough for all of them. I know I like all these people coming in, but if they're all going to be bantamweights, guys, there's a lot of things coming for you. So
Absolutely, killers for real. Do not sleep on the lower weights. All right, well, moving on to the co-main event of the evening. We're already there. This is Gerald Meerschaert versus Reinier de Ridder. Reinier de Ridder, of course, coming over from One Championship, a two-division champion in that organization. We'll be talking about One Championship a little bit after this card, but in regards to this fight, this is his debut in the UFC. What did you think of Reinier de Ridder?
I one, I think I'm okay with him. I think that's what I'll say off rip is I think I'm okay watching him fight again for now. Okay. Because he's kind of goofy. He's kind of funny to watch. Um, but and I and I will say also he jumped into the promotion with a very high level of competition. GM3 is not a slouch. People really had a lot of faith in him, and I see why. You know, in my opinion, he's just Paul Craig esque, but I think Ritter did a really good job of showcasing that he had a lot of different skills, that he's not just like raw potential, that he actually can utilize the skills that he, you know, was able to get a championship with, 2 championships with. And whether or not GM3 is the type of competition that a 2-time champion should be going to, you know, 3 rounds with, I'm not the judge of that right now, but it did look like Ritter is here to compete, and it seems like going forward he's going to have a lot healthier of a mental state. Moving forward, that will be very key for him to have a lot of success.
I agree. So, definitely not a world ending performance in his debut. Sometimes you would expect, especially as a two division champion in another organization, that they would come over and walk right through their competition. That was certainly not the case here. But that is because Gerald Meerschaert is the fucking man. He is just the man. I love this guy. I'm one of those people that is riding with Meerschaert. He is in your face no matter what. I mean, the way I would describe this fight was a very competitive bar fight. I mean, like these guys, you know, are both sort of clunky and, like you said, a little bit goofy in there. They're saying that De Ritter has an unorthodox, you know, kind of an odd style, you know, whatever, a strange set of skills, the way that he was presenting them. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's certainly true to an extent, but it really at times was just like they were both in each other's faces, like just like who's gonna break here, and I appreciated that. I love those kinds of fights. Mearshart has the mustache for it. I mean, he's absolutely looking the part of the burly man who would be kicking ass in the Western Saloon. So I'm okay with all of that. I mean, I thought that Mearshart did the right thing in this fight, knowing that DeRitter is a very skilled BJJ guy. He made the point, actually, the commentary. I'm glad they brought that up. That Mearshart was saying he thought that DeRitter had a more, I guess, like sports BJJ kind of approach, which is an interesting way to look at it, where it's like it's not necessarily like MMA BJJ where you're actively combining all of these skills plus your jujitsu. I don't know if I necessarily full on agree with that because his style is kind of weird and funky. So it's like there is a lot going on there. But I thought that as a mentality and a way to approach the fight, I thought it was a smart move on his part. Go in his face, don't go to the ground. I mean, there were times when Mearshart was on his back and he basically just off of his back 300 kicked Rainier off of him. Like it was just like, no, get the fuck off. Leg straight up into his abdomen, off he goes. So I appreciated that Mearshart wanted to strike. DeRitter actually landed a couple of decent strikes himself. So, I mean, maybe not like Mearshart was going to have 100% of the advantage there either. But based on the fact that this guy obviously is a high level competitor, I thought it was a decent approach there. And really, throughout the rest of this entire fight, Mearshart just continued pressuring so much that he kind of exhausted himself. I say that this was a win via arm triangle / exhaustion.
Yeah, I want to point out that for the Apex 100, the co-main event and main event having the Apex final bosses is like absolutely wonderful. The fact
Buddy.
that this wasn't going to be the co-main event was kind of criminal. Like this should have always been the co-main, in my opinion, with GM3 and the Neo Magny. Like that's the Apex right there. You go to the Apex, it's those two. Like anyway, so
Absolutely. No, yeah. I didn't even think about it in those terms, but you make a great point.
and so I want to go ahead and give props to the MMA guru real quick because he made a great point. And he said Ritter beating GM3 basically I'm paraphrasing, basically having to take down 3 health bars. He knocked him down, he gassed him out, and he subbed him. I mean, he really put in some work because GM3 ain't no slouch, man. And I think it was just the final boss really of the Apex, and Ritter, he came through for us. So shout out
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, for sure. As I said up front, I mean, not a world-ending performance. He didn't go out there and steamroll him. So we're gonna have to see how he fares going on forward. I thought it was a little wild that I think he was joking, but saying that he was like, "Hey, put me in 309." I was like, I don't know about all that, pal. Maybe not off of that performance, but I do think he was kind of kidding. He seems like he has a decent sense of humor in general. He's kind of a buoyant character, I would say. So yeah, I got no real problems with him. I just want to see more out of him.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, not 100%. I think you did exactly what I was expecting you to do. Coming from another promotion that I know is like the little brother, I'm not expecting you to be a world killer. If you win a fight, let alone finish it, you're good in my book, man. You're doing what you should, or maybe I don't even believe you should. So,
Well, yeah,
from
I mean,
my
I guess that kind of goes to the point, though. It's like, yeah, you did that in those other promotions, but now you have to hang with the real big dogs. So,
yeah,
that's what I mean when I say like I want to see more out of him. It's like, okay, well, you got your win. That's great. You're getting your footing in a new organization. A lot of different circumstances in his life, which we'll talk about in a little bit. All of that is now evened out based on the fact that you are here, you got your win, and you theoretically are more comfortable. Now go and show that you're high level here.
yeah,
So,
100%.
all right. Well, right on. Moving on to the main event of the evening: Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates. This is a little bit heartbreaking as a guy who, I want to root for Neil Magny, man. I am okay with gatekeepers keeping gates, but Carlos Prates done kicked that door right the fuck open. What'd you think?
I God, I was walking out of work and just a little bit ago, right before, and I'm thinking like, what am I gonna say tonight? And I just thought in my mind, like, holy shit, Carlos Prates really smoked Neo Magny. Like he starched him so bad. Like he it was so bad because like there was like a glimpse of hope, like, wow, maybe Neo Magny might can make it to round two. And then nah, he just gets fucking clipped and like face down, fall into the mat. And and shout out Carlos Prates because he's just got this stone cold killer attitude where he just walks away. Like the walk off KO 4 times in a row. Like, I mean, show at least do a backflip one time or something, like I would be celebrating my ass off. But yeah, no, he's just really that dude. I really appreciate Carlos Prates because he knows what we want to see. I don't know if you noticed in the little board before it, they're showing like everybody's stats. Carlos Prates he's never shot for a takedown. So that's not what he does.
That's pretty wild. Yeah. I
Oh wait,
mean,
actually, he has one takedown in this fight. So I guess one
well,
at the this point.
actually, to that point, he had a takedown, but that was actually Prates turning Magny's takedown attempt into a takedown of his own.
Yeah,
So yeah, still never really shot. I mean, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, this dude is out here to strike. The Muay Thai that is tattooed on his chest is there for a reason. Yeah, I mean, this was just textbook, really what a lot of people were thinking what was going to happen happened, sort of deal. And again, it hurts to see. I like Neil Magny. I think he's a good guy. I certainly did not want to see this as the end of his career, essentially. I mean, not that it has to be, of course. He can stick around. He can still, take fights here and there or whatever. But I mean, the run that Magny has now been on, the anti-run, after getting fucking annihilated by Michael Morales, and now this, it hurts to see for the guy. I feel bad looking at it, kind of deal. It's an empathetic feeling that I have for him in that regard. But to his credit, in this fight, he did take the fight to Prates. I mean, he was trying to go out there and win this fight. It wasn't like he was intimidated at all. Neil Magny is a goer to the last second that he can. So I appreciate that. Um, he was trying his best out there until.
yeah. I want to make a point. Like you said with Neil Magny, he's this run that he's been on. Had this been somebody like Tony Ferguson, the level of competition is just going to keep going down after his losses or whatever. But Neil Magny, man, it just seems like he's getting better opponents every time. He gets knocked out, and it's like, all right, give him the dude who knocks him out in the first round this time. Like, Jesus.
Yeah. No, well, I think what it is really is that like the organization also keys into the gatekeeper status. And that's exactly what you're seeing. You're seeing him open the doors to all of these guys, especially for the fact that, I mean, just until this fight, he was in the rankings. So, I mean, if you're looking to get some guys into the rankings, Magny is just your guy to jump him in.
Yeah, I honestly, the only thing that I like after this, okay, we know Carlos Prates is really good, but what I really wanted to see after this and what sucks is like why can't we just have Michael Morales and Carlos Prates now? Like we could have just skipped the Neil Magny part. He could have just sat out one. Michael Morales, we could have just had that as the fight night apex. If that's not what's next, in my opinion, I know they probably want to build them up a little more, get them both ranked, but maybe Michael Morales is now
Oh,
15.
he is. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
well, I think that Pratis is now 15, and Michael Morales took the previous number that Magny had.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good fight. I I know that's two people that just fought Neil Magny, but I'm ready to see that. I don't care anybody else in the mix. I don't really care about. I like Mike Morales and Carlos Prates. I want to see that one. JDM, what Carlos Prates said, nah, that's all right. Actually, go into it. Um, I think Carlos Prates calling out JDM was smart because Australia is going to come up. Kaya wants to fight Izzy, and I think they could get almost all the fighting nerds on that card and do Brazil versus Australia. I think that would be really fucking cool. But that's just me.
I mean, I maybe they might want to scatter that a little bit because of how great all of these guys are becoming.
True.
But yeah, I know that Prates was also saying that he's got a child in the country, so I guess there's something there. That would kind of make sense as well. Yeah, I mean, I like look. I think that what you're seeing now with the like, sadly, Neil Magny had to be the guy that they all went through, but what you're seeing now is exactly what this sport is. You're seeing these guys who are making their names, getting to where they will eventually be, and what they're, they're evolving before our eyes, fight by fight. And both of those guys on really heavy hype trains. I mean, like, not hype trains. They're on very strong trajectories, is a good way to put it. So I mean, like, yeah, I don't know if they'd want to do that fight. Like you said, they might want to build them both up, get them both a little bit higher in the rankings before putting those numbers at each other. But if that's what if that is the route that the organization wants to go, then I mean, that's it's certainly not bad. I would suspect that both these guys are probably going to get higher numbers individually, and then eventually maybe they'll fight after that.
I think the last note that I want to make is that I don't know if this is true, but you might be able to track through a person's career just how much money they make in bonuses because of like the modifications that they get done to their body. Carlos Prates has got some nice teeth. He's got a brand new back tattoo that is covering his entire torso.
Fucking massive.
And not just massive, but the detail. Like,
Yeah, it's a nice one.
so and the fact that he got that done in between his last fight and this, that's a long time. Anyway, so Carlos Prates is making his money. He's clearly getting what he wanted done this whole time. And
For sure.
Carlos Prates, I want to make the last point is his English is phenomenal.
Yeah, really good. Really, really good.
Where did he get this? I have no idea. I mean, that's really all the fighting nerds. Like they I don't know what's going on. I mean, they really are. Oh my gosh. Speaking of the fighting nerds, because here we are, Carlos Prates. I screenshotted it and put it in the Discord earlier. I don't know if you saw in the promo video where Carlos Prates is training in the gym. There's a mural on the background. There's Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, Anderson Silva, and Albert Einstein,
Yes,
all wearing fighting nerds glasses.
I did see that. That was pretty funny. Why, random Albert Einstein sighting.
And like, it would be one thing. Like, as Brazilians, I'm thinking, what do they know about Albert Einstein? I don't even know about Albert Einstein. Like, I don't know. Like, it was crazy that was the guy they looped in with all these great martial artists. And then I'm thinking, well, they are the nerds. Maybe they really do like Albert Einstein down there. Maybe they're just really about their shit, man.
Yeah,
Like,
I think you might have answered your own question there. The king, the ultimate nerd,
no,
the
literally.
final boss of nerds.
Yeah,
Um,
the biggest nerd I've literally ever known in life. Like,
Yeah, for for sure. But yeah, I mean, going back to the fight itself here. I mean, really, just well placed shots is the big note that I have from Pratis. This is just going through all of his fights at this point. He finds the placement so nicely. And the note that came up multiple times on the watch along, and shout out to the Vitz King for for bringing it up, is that oftentimes it's placement over power when it comes to some of these shots, because what Rick Allen was trolling us with early on in the stream, saying that this was a dive or whatever, obviously not that, but it was a glancing shot to behind the ear, to that the bone right behind the back of the skull, whatever, the protrusion there in the skull. It was a very well placed shot in that regard. He swung right through it, but this was an example of power plus placement.
I want to counter because I'm curious.
Sure.
We talk about precision over power all the time. I don't think that explains why we have such skinny guys that can knock people out, because you're not going to tell me that all the skinny knockout artists that they're just pinpoint accurate. Like, it just can't be that they're all just the most accurate strikers of all time and they just happen to be the skinniest people. Like, there's got to be something else to it. Like Carlos Prates, he's not the skinniest guy ever, but he is. If you look at the build, he's built weird, guys. He's got really long legs, super long arms, torso's kind of small, and he has no neck. He's like Sean Woodson if Sean Woodson was not a boxer and it was a Muay Thai guy. Like, it, I don't know what it is. The precision, I do agree. I mean, but he didn't chin Magny. Like, he didn't clean
Well,
hit him
but
right
he
over
did
the.
though. I mean, he did earlier. The right
But
hand
no,
dropped him earlier.
but what I'm saying is like the shot that clipped him that you see bro like fall to, it's like that ain't no precision. Like that's just a shot that just like landed on a dude's head. Like I
Well,
mean,
that's what I'm saying, though. I think that it's precision plus power, and I mean, and the power even for the skinnier guys is there. I mean, like this,
got to be velocity, man. You can move. There's got to be
yeah. I mean,
something moving.
that's part of the power. I mean, like the amount of force that you can generate with the shot just is able to connect, and really, I mean, like a lot of times, like depending on where you hit it, it doesn't take all that much. I mean, really, like it's those two things intersecting at the perfect moment. I mean, I think that that's really the explanation there. I mean, they are fighting welterweight, so it is a little bit bigger. But I mean, with some of the really small guys, I mean, it's the same basic concept when they actually get the knockouts.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Either way, I mean, whatever the case may be, call it a fluke if you want to. I don't think that it was in the slightest. I mean, he got it right there where it needed to be
No,
behind the
definitely
arrow to
not a
do it.
fluke.
But yeah, either way, I mean, just a fantastic shot that did it. Like I said, also like that shot specifically, it wasn't just that he landed it, it was that he swung through it. I mean, like it landed, it was like the bottom two knuckles kind of deal that actually made the connection, and he kept on going. So there was a large amount of force. He was swinging from a decent distance as well. So the amount of distance that you have to generate the force was there. I think it was just a really perfect shot in that regard.
I think one thing I noticed very early on with Prates that I really like, and I don't see it done very often. I'm trying to think who I originally saw like do it first. That gave me the idea. It might have been Islam. Um, Carlos Prates, when Neil Magny was circling out from him, he was throwing high kicks on the side that he was, countering to, making him have to go the other way. And I thought that was very key. You got to keep him in the range where you want him. If he's getting outside and he's, running too much on the outside, that high kick, it doesn't have to land. Even if they block it, they got to at least be honest to it. And it's going to stumble him back on track where you're in front of him. Then you line up the straight right or straight left, whatever you're fancying at that moment. And Carlos Prates, the fighting nerds, man, it really is like a joke kind of deal, but it's not. Like I think at first we're like, oh, the fighting nerds, ha ha ha, like it's just like a cool name for them. But I think they do take this shit serious. Like they really do want to figure out like how to win, and
I
that's really
mean,
cool.
proof is in the fucking pudding, man. I mean, Jesus Christ. But so one other thing I did want to ask about, because I didn't know where this was coming from, but apparently no glove touch for a reason. Was Prates talking shit? Was that
The face off was pretty intense between them too. I think it was just like he wants to knock him out kind of deal. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't think
I don't know if there was
Prates
something specific.
I don't think so. I just think Prates seems like an all business kind of dude. Like, cause after the fight, he seems fine. Like he's not like in a bad mood even before. Like, I mean, I just think it was one of those things. Like, I'm here to do a job, not make friends. So
All right, hey, fair enough then.
Neil, listen, actually, to go one more point on it, Neil didn't seem opposed to it. Like he didn't put his
Right.
hand out and like, so they both knew like fuck it, like whatever.
Yeah, well, no, that just it gave me the impression that that there was some incident or some shit talking that happened that Magny got upset by, and that might have instigated it. But I mean, you're right; neither of them did put him out. So,
People just
um,
don't like Neil Magny for some reason. Ian Gary had some, but Ian Gary's also
Ian Gary was a fucking idiot for what he did
yeah,
with Neil Magny. That whole situation was absolutely stupid. But
yeah.
yeah, you're right. Magny for some reason just gets a bad rap in general. It's an unfortunate thing because I think he's a pretty decent fighter.
He seems like he literally just shows up and he's just happens to be the opponent of the dude who's a killer. Like you can't really be mad that he's trying to get a paycheck.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I guess that about puts a pin in UFC Fight Night Magny versus Prates, the 100th card at the Apex. Pretty good one, you think?
It was good, and I think going back, it'll be really like a really good rewatch. Even though we talked about it before, ESPN and the rewatches, man, this will be one of those ones you can't find ever again once it's gone. But going back, it'll be a lot better because you won't have the slowing down of the pace. Like I can't believe that on the 100th episode, I sat and watched people in a booth. Like they were pulling people out of nowhere to give takes. Like I swear to you, I saw two random women, like Minty was on there, and then there was 2 additional ones, and then there was like the desk booth, and then they went down to Laura Bisping and Brendan. Like they went around the world on this one. It was
They had
kind
to
of
dig
crazy,
deep. Yeah.
dude. Talk about going in the rabbit, like, pulling the rabbit out the hat. Dana was on his shit, man. God damn.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Yeah, perhaps for the re-airing, if the UFC ever does one of those live streams again where they re-air, they can do a little bit of editing to it. But
Yeah.
either way, good stuff though. Fun card.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on real quick to back to Renier de Ritter. We wanted to talk very briefly about some of the comments that he made regarding one championship, and this kind of puts into context a little bit of some possible trouble in paradise, so to speak, when it comes to one championship. So let me bring this up real quick here. All right. So this is Renier de Ritter in his post-fight interview during the press questions and stuff like that, outside of the octagon, of course, for anybody who's just listening. And this is what he had to say.
Yeah, it's been a bad couple of years. The stress I've been put through, the stress my family's been put through, to even just get fights. It hasn't been nice. And this is something. It's hard for me to talk bad because I've had a couple good years at one as well. In the beginning, they treated me well, but over the last couple of years, it's been really bad. And this is something I feel I have to do for other fighters. If you think of signing with one championship, don't. It's that simple. You should not. There's nothing there. There's no fights. You're just wrong if you do this. If you sign there, this is a bad mistake.
Okay. So this is coming after now a couple of other fighters who have also defected in one way or another from one, and a couple of shakeups as far as champions go over at one as well. So the ones that I know of, and Chase, you can add to this list if you have any that you're thinking of that I miss, but you have Sage Northcutt, who just left the promotion, they say amicably, but he left one way or another. You have Mikey Musumeci, who left under kind of weird circumstances where he was asked to cut weight like by a ridiculous amount. I want to say somewhere in the range of like 26 pounds in a week. And because he was not able to do that, he was stripped of his title. So that's the second one. The third one is recently Rod Tang, who's one of their big stars in one. He did not leave the organization, but he was stripped because he missed weight. He still ended up winning his fight. So he, I guess, basically retains just by nature of him not losing. But those three are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that were a little bit strange. So when you add in Renier de Ritter into the equation, obviously there are some people who are not super happy with the promotion there. So that's what I got. What do you got, Chase?
I want to first say that it sucks that he had to like muster up like confidence. Like it felt like this was hard for him to do, like to say like this was shit for me and my family. Not just like, hey, I was put in predicaments where I didn't want to like fight and they made me, or I couldn't get paid what I want. Like this was a situation that affected other people, not just myself. And that he had to like put others on notice. Like, don't go there. He felt that he's doing a service to everybody else by letting him know like this is not the place that you need to go. There's no fights, which is a crazy thing to say. There's no fights being made. Like if that's the case, I mean, if you are one of these people who even if you're one of these people who want to just get a paycheck, if there's no fights, you're not getting paid. If you're one of these people who just want to fight, there's no fights, you're not getting what you want. And it really, I feel bad for him, and I feel good that he's in a better place now, because as a two-time two-division champ, this is how one treated him. Like even in the later years of his career, how are you treated better when you first get there, and then you start winning, and you're the top product? How are you getting treated worse? And Ali in the Discord brought up that Demetrius Johnson didn't hate his time there. And I think that was a great point to bring up, because sure, one treated the greatest product that they have like a god. I'm sure of it. But the fact that everybody else under him is saying that they didn't get treated like that probably says something that they're doing something wrong. If your 2 division champ is grateful to get up out of there and he's telling everybody, do not fucking sign, there is a big problem there. And like you said, with all the issues with Mikey and Rod Tang, one is on the hot seat, and the UFC is going to be able to steal a lot of talent here in the next couple of years when these contracts start going up. Maybe PFL or Bellator, but I can just tell you that the pool, the rosters are going to get larger just because of what just happened on this video.
Yeah, to your earlier point, it is very insane for him to say that there are no fights to be made for him as a 2 division champion as well. I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever, especially if they are putting on shows regularly, which they do. I mean, even the ones that are not aired on the outlets that make it over to the United States, I believe that they're still doing more regional shows that are going on in the region that they operate, which is of course in Asia. So very strange there. One other note I wanted to add to this conversation was that I am somewhat active on LinkedIn, and when I'm on LinkedIn, when it comes to MMA, I follow a lot of people who are involved in the financial side of these organizations. And I just saw not too long ago, it's one of those things that like I filed away in the back of my mind and never really had a reason to say it before. But I just saw recently that one championship just within the last few months, I want to say, turned a profit for the first time. Like they had been they'd been operating in the red for the entire time that they had existed up until very recently. Now that's not unusual when it comes to the fight game to operate in the red for a while you're getting your footing and stuff, but one's been around for a little minute. So, I mean, it's a little bit interesting that just now they're starting to turn a profit. And also just now, these types of situations are starting to all somewhat happen within the span of a year, I would say. I mean, less than a year for the situations that we were talking about. So odd in all of that. And I mean, there have been a lot of rumors about one. I kind of shrug that stuff off. People saying, "Oh, one is a money laundering operation," like that kind of stuff. I mean, generally, I don't like pay much credence to that kind of thing because that just sounds to me like people just talking shit on the internet. That's like a bunch of yap. But now you're starting to see the actual fighters talk about this stuff. And the point that I had made when we were talking about this a little bit in the Discord is that if you start seeing these types of messages come from the fighters that fight locally to the region, the fighters that are fighting out of Asia, train in Asia, generally of Asian descent, if they are starting to say these things, then you're going to know that there is a real problem. This is already a problem, but that will be a death knell kind of situation if your local guys are saying that as well.
I think the UFC, for the longest time, they've been, I said it earlier, the mecca of the sport. Like if you're the best of the best, you go to the UFC. But I think with this right here, knowing that one of these promotions is a lot lower in regards to where the fighters like were on a rank where they would be, I think the UFC might be opening the doors a little more to not the best of the best, but we're still taking the best of what one or these other promotions had at the time. Because if the money's looking like that and they can't pay, if they're not getting the fighters that want to fight or the champions fights, then clearly something's up. And the money's not moving right because those are your highest ticket sales. If you're only selling the lower promotion guys type of deal, like if your 2 division champ is saying he doesn't get fights, then you're not making money for 2 divisions of champions. Like that's only you're just filling up prelim spots and people who aren't the highest level of the competition, and nobody wants to see that, especially in these promotions. Like we want to see the best. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. I'm definitely going to be more conscious now of keeping up with the financial side of the sport as far as the outlets that I consume. So I will keep you posted if anything new comes out of this in that regard. Which is, I really think that my biggest takeaway from all of this is that it's very unfortunate that this is happening because I am very much an advocate for variety and choice when it comes to the landscape in all regards. I mean, that's just a free market principle. You want to have competition in the marketplace to breed the best product for the consumer. So, I am a huge fan of the one promotion. I think that in some respects, I actually like one better than the UFC in some respects. I mean, obviously the UFC, the talent level and, the prestige and all of those aspects are definitely there, but the fight quality in one is very high often. I mean, me and Vitzking will tell you time and time again, he prefers one to the UFC. So I think that this is an unfortunate sign of problems in that promotion if this is all the case.
Honestly, but you're probably saying exactly how it is. These dudes put on great fights because they're probably scratching and clawing for everything that they get.
Yeah.
And if they're in these areas, Asia or anything around the Asian descents or whatever, maybe they aren't the understanding how much power they have over one right now. Maybe they're not leveraging saying, "Hey, you just had a two division champ leave and say you guys are shit. So where's my money? Because I'm the highest paid ticket right now." And if they're not able to get that point across, then they're going to keep getting lowballed, and then they're going to end up leaving, and then have the same message: "I wasn't getting fights. I'm not getting paid what I was. Blah 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 blah. It was bad for me and my family." So
Yeah, and I mean, and this does go back to a point that was brought up on a watch along, many months ago when I was talking to Vitz King about one. I think we might have even been watching a one card, saying, it's interesting. This is, of course, in the context of the time. We're like, it's interesting that you don't see more of these Muay Thai guys coming over to the UFC. It's interesting that these guys stick with one. I mean, obviously, if they're from the region, they fighting locally makes sense to them to an extent, but it's like, why don't they just come over to the UFC? I mean, there's obviously opportunities there if you go out there and pursue them, especially when you're fighting Muay Thai. Often these records are insane. I mean, some of these guys are, fighting with like 57-12. You know what I mean? Like the amounts of fights that these guys are taking is just nuts. Perhaps there's some merit to what you're saying there.
yeah.
You
So
know?
I mean, it is an interesting situation. Unfortunately, watching this video, like I really did feel for the dude. It's not many times that like you watch people talk and they just have something about them that like makes you want to listen to them. But in this case, it wasn't like an exciting and like exhilarating type of thing. Like I really felt bad listening to bro. Like he literally said like it was bad for me and my family. Like I really just like think like how could they have made it bad on your family, bro? Like I know you weren't getting fights and not getting paid, but like if it goes deeper than just not being in a bad financial situation, then that's something different. Like that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I guess that's about it for right now when it comes to all of this. Just to recap, we have a bunch of fighters that are not happy with the promotion after having left. We have a couple of champions that are stripped, and that's a little bit of a situation as well. There have been rumors about one being in financial straits for quite a while that maybe have been brushed off in the past. Perhaps it's time to look at those a little bit more closely and, you
Just
know,
turned a profit.
yeah,
So
right. Just turned a profit for the first time. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that would seem to be signaling trouble brewing for one championship. So, we'll keep an eye on it and we'll come back and update when updates are available, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
about all we can do.
It's about it for right now on that. So there you go with that. But all right, so let's wrap it up with a little bit of a look at the upcoming card. Of course, that is UFC 309, Jones versus Miocic. Wow, it feels like I was 7 years old when this fight was announced. I'm an old man now. So yeah, it is it's finally happening. John Jones finally having his last hurrah vanity fight with Stipe Miocic. Me and Chase have a pact that we're not going to go on any long-winded rambling rants. We've talked this situation to death. Everyone on the planet has talked this to death. So what would you like to say about this fight, Chase?
I think the thing that I want to make known most about this fight, it doesn't have anything to do with John, and it actually does have to do with Tom Aspinall. So I will say that this fight has been set since Tom Aspinall was not interim champ when this fight was originally booked. John Jones got injured, and now here we are. So the fact that Tom Aspinall has been asking for a fight with John Jones, and This fight has been scheduled for a really long time, and even the fans running away with that John Jones is scared. It's like, guys, the fight has been booked. We are finally here. Anything after this point, I will gladly listen to. But as of right now, we've known this fight is going to happen before Tom even took that silver belt. So let's get this one over with, and then we will hear the Tom Aspinall stuff. I do think John Jones wins this one. That's about it.
Well, I am going to do something that no one else on this planet is going to do. I'm going to say Stipe Miocic wins this fight. Boom. Clip it. Let's fucking go. Stipe fucking wins. Stipe still has it in him, and he's going to pull the greatest upset in the history of this sport off, because I actually do believe that if he pulls off this win, it would be the greatest upset in the history of MMA.
If you beat John Jones at this point, it is a feat in its own. But doing it out 4 years on the couch, that's kind of crazy.
There's no way that Stipe wins this fight. I mean, I think that it would be insane. Look, I was talking to somebody else about this today, and we were looking at the odds. Now, these odds are a little bit different than the ones that we had seen, but I was like minus 725. I think the odds that we had were minus 600 and plus 475. So I was like, wow, that's actually not as crazy as I thought the odds were going to be. So I guess there are some people who think that there is some minuscule sliver of a chance for Stipe.
I honestly, like, I don't think it's okay. John Jones has never lost. So we're obviously going to go under the assumption that it is possible, which at this point doesn't seem to be. So Stipe, John Jones is not the striker that he once was. And he's a lot slower on the feet now. I think it's going to be a wrestling match to a T, because John wants to get a sub. But I think Stipe will do a really good job of defending all of that, and he'll probably lose in a lot of control time. But I don't. If any heavyweights can make it to decision, it's these ones. And if they're going to wrestle, I think that's very easy to happen.
So you think that this is going to go to decision?
I think it very I don't know, man. John Jones, man. It sucks because, like, again, it's like, do I want to be the person who, like, I genuinely don't feel like John Jones should lose, and I don't want to be the person like, oh, he's got to lose one day, man. It's not gonna last forever, but like, I think this one could last forever. He's at a weight class where he literally is going to be better than everybody at everything for the rest of his career.
And you're taking the fight against this version of Stipe happening now in 2024. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like all of these factors, even, take out the legacy of John Jones. I mean, like, Stipe probably loses to the majority of the top 10 at this point. I mean, maybe not the top 10. I would say maybe the top 5. But you know what I'm saying? Like, look, I think that at least they give him a run for his money. Come on, man. I mean, let's call a spade on that one. Like, I am going to stand by my assessment that Stipe still has something left to offer this sport, and that he will get this win. So I'm going to be right about this. I'm putting it out there into the ether. I'm using the secret. I'm casting it off into the cosmos, and it's going to come back to me in tenfold of a return. So Stipe wins this fight. Book it, clip it, put it on everywhere. St. James said it.
I think also John Jones is leading this. I think I'm trying to think of a correct analogy. He's waving something over your eyes. Like, he's making you think like, I'm just as quick as I was. I just don't want to utilize that because I didn't need to against Cyril Gane. I knew I could evade and take him down or whatever. I think we're going to see just how Father Time has affected John Jones. He is up a weight class. We didn't see much of him at that weight class. He just got it done very, very quickly. And whatever you may think that he's what he was at light heavyweight, it's just not possible. He's heavier. He's older. Those two things will affect how quick you are, how your movement speed is. And I don't know if that's going to be the reason that he loses, because that's probably not. But I do think this is a wrestle heavy John Jones. Although he has such well-rounded skills that he can do a lot of different things, and he's probably not going to lose if he decides to stick around at heavyweight, which why wouldn't he? If you're the GOAT right now, why stop at this record? It's like, why wouldn't you blow the record out the park? Go be
Uh,
30-35-1, you know?
well, I made the whole video about exactly why he won't do that. It's for the sanctity of the legacy. But who knows? I think that what I had said in that video is that I think that the ego will trump the sanctity of the legacy to an extent, because I think that the talk about Tom Aspinall is getting to John a little bit more than he's letting on. So that's at least an early assessment that I had of it. I could be completely wrong. He's still saying that he wants to retire. He's also continuing down the Alex Pereira path. He's been beating that drum. There's a lot of things that could happen. I don't know exactly what is going to happen, but I would suspect that he sticks around for at least one more fight if I had to, gun to head kind of situation. But the last thing I did want to mention, based on what you were saying before that, was the one point that Stipe did make that I thought held some weight, was that, like you said, John was not tested at heavyweight the way that you would want to see a heavyweight champion tested. And most importantly, he did not feel heavyweight power. So there is something to be said for Stipe. The power is the last thing to go, is the conventional wisdom. I think that there's something to be said that, Stipe could come out and at least put on some hands if he can get close enough to him. That's going to be the big what if.
I I really would like to believe that if John Jones wins this fight, he's not retiring, because there are two people left. He wins this when he's 28-1. There's two people left on the list. Alex, Tom. If Tom is able, he would do that. What he would do, in my opinion, he would not retire, plan on fighting Alex, figure that one out just to keep Tom waiting a little longer, just to see if he can even hold the belt for, whatever. And then he comes back around to Tom, evens it out 30-1, then you retire. That's what I would say.
But in that scenario, do they strip him at heavyweight finally, or you're saying that they're going to make Tom Aspinall continue to be interim champion through all of that? That would be the biggest fucking slap in the face in the history of this sport, I would say.
But listen, in theory, or in John Jones' mind and everybody who loves John Jones, Tom Aspinall's not really going to hold that belt for too much longer if you want to go down that road. In theory, he loses it next fight, so who knows?
All right. Well, a lot to chew on there, of course. And I guess we're just going to have to see what actually plays out in reality. So, I think that based on the conventional wisdom, it will go John's way. And then we're going to have to see how that tape goes, down the line. But like I said, you heard it here first. Stipe Miocic pulls the greatest upset of all time off in this fight.
Yeah, there is a universe where Tom Aspinall is going to fight Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title somewhere.
Bingo. And that could be the very fucking universe in the multiverse that we're living in right now. So we'll see it. Who knows? But
save ourselves from a longer rant, even though we weren't supposed to.
I know. Well, yeah, I think it was an appropriate lengthed rant. I think we did okay on that one. So,
and I might have another one here for this one.
All right. Well, moving on. This is Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, which is still on. And there was this whole big rumor going around when all these fights were getting canceled and shifted around, and people were dropping out for no fucking reason, that this fight was off. Apparently, it's still on. So that's at least as of today.
Yeah, speaking of, there was a fight that we'll talk about on this card that just got pulled, by the way. So Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, it is a rematch. I think this is going to be a fun fight because people don't want to remember that Michael Chandler won the first round. Like, he was beating up Charles Oliveira, and I thought it was very convincing.
Yep.
And then I would like to point out that Dustin Poirier was able to sub Michael Chandler. Now, if Charles Oliveira, the submission master, is not able to submit Michael Chandler this fight, I think Michael Chandler might win this. I don't think he's going to knock him again. I just don't see it. Charles Oliveira's power, it was already kind of questionable.
Well, what I would say about this fight is that Michael Chandler did himself it actually cuts both ways, because I was going to say he did himself a disservice, but I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. He has been out for so long chasing the Conor fight that now people do not fully have the picture that he might have had in their minds had that fight either taken place or had he taken a different fight. The sport moves rather quickly when it comes to the fight by fight basis, and Michael Chandler has been on the sideline for quite a long time. If Michael Chandler comes back fighting the same way that he has fought since his entire time inside of the UFC, I mean, he back in Bellator, he fought with a little bit more control. He seemed at some point to decide, like he went the Justin Gaethje route and said, I don't care about being a technically sound fighter. I want to be an entertaining fighter. That's worked out for him as far as getting the fights and the money goes. So, I mean, that, whether or not he wins the fight almost is slightly irrelevant, considering that he goes out there and puts on the kind of fights that people want to see. So if he comes out here fighting like a bull in a china shop, as he often does, then I mean, there is plenty of potential for Oliveira to, snatch his neck. There's a bunch of different ways that it can go down. I mean, Oliveira had dropped him in that fight. You know what I mean? So it's like, obviously the power is there for Oliveira, at least at that time it was. And
Did I lose
Oliveira,
you? Oh,
uh-oh. Hello?
yeah, you froze for a second. No, you're good now. Jeez.
Okay, sorry. Well, what I was saying is that Oliveira, the powers is certainly there for him, and Michael Chandler leaves himself open often. So if there's a lot of different ways to get caught if you're Michael Chandler fighting the way that Michael Chandler has fought in the past. So if he fights differently, could be a whole different story. If he fights the same to be the most entertaining fighter on the planet, I think that Oliveira has a good shot of winning it.
I think you brought up a great point, the way he fights. And so just a couple of days ago, I was rewatching Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson. I was showing my dad. And when I'm watching it, I actually sat back and I said, Michael Chandler's actually like not rushing forward. Like he's actually taking his time and like calculating where he wants to, have his strikes land. And then, he was setting up obviously that front kick. Michael Chandler actually was composed back then, and that was against somebody who was at the time a very scary opponent. Charles Oliveira is the same deal. I think Michael Chandler just might be able to pull something off, man. That's the way that I see it. And I'm not a big Michael Chandler fan. I would say I like Charles Oliveira more, but it's possible for Michael Chandler to win just because of the success I saw him have him in the first round of their first matchup.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really like why Michael Chandler fighting the way that he fights now is always going to be just a big what if until he's actually in the cage. It's what the circumstances are in the actual fight at the moment, because it's very unpredictable, it's extremely explosive, and it's not very controlled. So, I mean, like, could he catch Oliveira? Absolutely. Could he get caught? Absolutely. That's what makes him such a dynamic fighter and exciting to watch, but not necessarily somebody that you want to put a lot of money on.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, so I would probably side with Oliveira just off of that fundamental aspect. Moving on, we got Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. I don't know why everybody is so down on this fight. I am very excited to see Bo Nickel again. I seem to be the only Bo Nickel fan on the planet, apparently. I don't know why that is, but
no, I like Bo. I do think he's going to win this one so easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
I honestly think, though, I think he'll probably strike with him. Paul Craig's striking is so bad. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for Bo to trick the audience. Like, hey, my striking is really good. I beat up Paul Craig, not knowing that Paul Craig's stand-up is like one of the worst ever. And then also, I want to make a point that the people who are like, I'm putting money on Paul Craig, big brain, because he's going to get a triangle choke. I have never seen people have so much faith in one dude's one submission. Like he dead ass has no other submissions in his game. He just has the triangle, the triangle. And like, sure, it happened twice. You got some really good opponents with it, but like this is like years down the line now. I'm waiting for it to happen again. Brendan Allen made you look like shit, and Kaio popped your head off the fucking cage. So whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's all pretty well the full-on assessment of it. I think that this is another slightly higher, but this is really just a stepping stone for Bo Nickel. Another stepping stone in the path that he's on. And I hate to say it because I mean, like Paul Craig, I want to be a fan more than I can be, unfortunately, but it's just the reality of the situation. And Bo Nickel is the real deal. I mean, he's proving it time and time again. I mean, back when Bo Nickel was talking about the Hamzat fight, I was like, I could see that. I know that that's kind of crazy now with the, Hamzat possibly challenging for the title. I still don't even think it's all that crazy. I mean, I think that Bo needs to prove himself, more. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously he's 6-0. That is kind of wild that he's even in a position where he is now. But I mean, the finishes are so convincing. And I mean, I just don't see any real weaknesses in the game, and he sticks to the game plan so goddamn well. So yeah, I'm with it.
American wrestling, man, it seems to work. If you got that as your base, anything's possible. Look where John Jones started.
There you go. Sure. The next John Jones, hopefully
There,
without
Bo Nickel, the next John Jones. Chase said it here first.
market, dude. I like it. All right. Well, yeah. So there you go on that one. Now we're starting to get into the parts of the card that people are a little bit underwhelmed by. I still think that this is a decent card overall, but this is Viviane Araújo versus Karine Silva. I mean, I don't really have too strong an opinion on this one based on the performances I've seen in the past. I would slightly lean towards Karine Silva, but it's really more of just gut based on the last couple of performances on both sides.
Yeah, this one, I mean, it's just a filler for me. I do love my women's MMA, but it's not interesting when it's just two people from the same country, in my opinion. Like, it's just two Brazilian women fighting. Like, if this was like, a Polish girl versus a Brazilian, then I'm like, oh, okay, something interesting's happening. But this one, I mean, I'll watch it. I'm gonna be excited.
Well, why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because of a similarity of the styles, or is it
I
because
think that might be what it is. Like, I think I'm just expecting to see kind of like a stalemate kind of matchup,
Yeah, I think that might be pretty accurate, but it could end up being some high level grappling, which would be
Yeah,
kind of
like
cool. I mean,
they're both fighting style Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's just going to be grappling. And honestly, that's not bad with the women because we've talked about it. They're more flexible. They can get into a lot of different exchanges and um and role reversals. But I'm not too sure if this will be one. It's high up on the card, so the UFC might know something.
yeah, perhaps. Or it could end up being like that one fight that was high up on the card in Edmonton and completely let everybody
Yeah.
down. But
Yeah, that could have been Jillian Roberts, dude. Like, she could have been the not the co-main. Yeah, it was the
no, just
co-main, was
under
it?
the co-main, just under the
Oh,
co-main,
okay.
right
Yeah, you're
before
right.
that.
You're right.
Yeah, but yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Well, either way, let's hope for a good fight. Moving
And
on
then
to a better one. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Mauricio Rufy versus James Iontop there, or James Iontop, I guess is how it's pronounced.
yeah, I'm gonna say Mauricio gets this one done quick and then fulfills his destiny to meet up in Australia with the other nerds. But
There
that's
you
just
go.
me.
He's on a quest down under after
Yeah.
this one. I mean, this is one of the rare instances where I would say a minus 1,000 is probably warranted. I think that James Iontop is not great, to
Yeah.
be polite. I've never been impressed by anything I've seen out of him. And
He
Mauricio
knows how to get
Rufy,
beat up though, dude.
there you go. You're right. There's a silver lining to everything. Yeah, no, Mauricio Hoofy he's a fighting nerd, and he's one of the real deal ones. So yeah, I mean, I think that this is pretty open and shut.
But to make the point, he is the fighting nerd that we've seen the least action from. So potential for him to get fraud checked, if that's what you want to say, on this is his only second fight, right?
Is it his second?
So contender series, then Jamie Malarkey knockout.
Yeah,
Which
yeah, okay.
which honestly, Jamie Malarkey is kind of a pretty big jump for somebody right off the contender series. If you think about it, that's a name. That's not just somebody you'd be like, oh, that's a can, which
Yeah.
it was. But Mauricio Rufy, we've only seen him one fight, and yeah, he did some cool stuff and he finished, but potential that we haven't seen the full picture yet. What are the holes in his game? Where are we going to see like, this is the fighting nerd that doesn't have all the parts. This is the work in progress.
I think that one thing that will be interesting in this fight is how much or how little he ends up using some of the more creative things that he likes to do, because he is one of those guys that likes to get a little bit not wild. He's actually pretty controlled with the creative striking that he does, but he'll go for a sweep. He'll go for like a spinning kick that you wouldn't necessarily have expected at the time. So I mean, he does kind of make it unconventional.
I think that's a great point, because that's a question of when is he gonna take it the most serious. I know that is a serious version of him to have that creative and that yo-yo type of fighting style that everything's on a string for him. But one of these days he's going to be in a matchup where maybe it's the first strike or whatever that actually lands, and he realizes like, oh, I need to like lock in, like I can't do a spin kick this time, like kind of deal. So I don't think it'll be this one, but eventually you got to ask yourself, when is the creativity going to meet like ahead with somebody's actual opposition, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's nothing to say that the creativity couldn't work to his benefit because I do think he's pretty controlled with it. I don't think that he's wild necessarily. I just think that he has a lot of tricks in the bag. But you're right. I mean, this is certainly something that he could be encountering. So yeah, we'll see what happens in this fight. But I do think that James Yantop is a good canvas for him to utilize those skills if he does it effectively, which it certainly seems like he could.
Yeah, canvas is what he's going to become. Like he's literally going to mold into it after Rufy's done with him.
Absolutely. And shout out to the base goddess, by the way.
Literally.
Yeah, much appreciated for the check-in and for all the support. When's your next video coming out?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGee. I am very high on Marcus McGee. I think that this is a very good test for him, Jonathan Martinez. I like this fight a lot. What do you think?
I think it is a good fight. I do also like Marcus McGee, but as we've known, he's old. Like he is somebody who got in here at a little too old, maybe for how low of a weight it is. So that's the thing that worries me, because Jonathan Martinez, he's one of these dudes that's lightning quick. Like he's gonna light Marcus up on the feet. So it worries me that Marcus might not be able to use his, I want to say, a grown man strength kind of deal. But I don't know. Martinez is coming off a loss. Marcus looked really good in this last one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and he's been looking good. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing. I mean, like, I think that he is one of these guys that really locks in a way like he's one of those dudes that, like, when they talk about the flow state in MMA, I feel like he has a very keen awareness as to how to get into that state early in a fight. So I, at least based on the performances that I've seen, I think that he locks in very quickly in fights and then rides that out to a nice victory generally. So
I want to also bring up that Marcus McGee, he has merch, and it is really, really cool because it's him, but I'm pretty sure he's got like a Ninja Turtle shell on, and he's like riding this. It's a really cool design for the merch. I really like his merch.
All right. Well, on the podcast right now, will you commit to buying some of his merch if he wins this fight?
Nah, definitely not. Can't do all that. Can't do all that, brother.
Clip it and send it back to him, everybody. Make Chase feel the pain for that. He brought it up and won't do it.
Yeah, Mark is gonna have to hook me up on that one, because the shirt is dope, but like just probably not worth $28 plus shipping. Like, like, come on, that's
fair enough. Marcus McGee, sponsor of the podcast. We already gave you a free shout out there.
Dead ass.
Right on. All right. Well, so that actually, I guess before we move on, who do you think is going to actually win?
I think, the base goddess. Yeah, I'm going with Martinez. He's probably, I don't know. I think he's just in that right mind, right state. What am I trying to say? That he's in the right place, right time. Excuse me. I know the auto kind of thing, but I think he'll bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, McGee is a slight favorite in this fight. I think Martinez is definitely a good dog. I'm gonna stick with McGee on this one personally.
Yeah, him coming in at a favorite is pretty interesting, but I mean, hey, listen, 3 finishes in the UFC, so I can't really argue.
And I will say that I will have a parlay with Martinez on it for sure. You know what I mean? It's one of those kind of deals that, I think that's too good a dog not to have some action on for sure.
100%.
All right. King Fingers is back. Mr. Weidman versus Eric Anders. This is the new and improved Eric Anders, from what I understand. Eric Anders, I think that I had seen had been battling some addiction problems in his past, and apparently now is locked in and clean and sober. So congratulations to him for that. But going up against Chris Weidman, who has been a bit of a problem for people at times, of course, has had some problems of his own in the lower part of his body. So what do you think?
I think I'm really fucking hoping to God that we finally get somebody who will kick this dude's leg again.
Jesus Christ, man.
Look. Brad Tavares came in here and did exactly what he needed to do, and nobody watched the fight. Apparently nobody watched the fight. Bruno Silva, he don't know, his nickname is Blind Otto, and he is now blind, and he was when they were watching film too, because it's the easiest thing ever. How do you not know Chris Weidman's leg is feeble? Like, you just have to fucking kick him in the leg, and
Well, he's got a titanium rod in it now, though.
he's not McGregor. He's not McGregor. Does not have no titanium rod. It's probably a walker cane that's holding him together. That is so crazy to me that Bruno Silva lost to this man. Obviously, it was some fluke shit. He got away with the double eye poke, fucking swipe, And Eric Anders, if you're coming off addiction, buddy, you need to fucking show me that you have some grit. I need to see the addict on this fight. Go crazy on Chris Weidman. I sincerely need it to happen so he can go back to the booth and stay his ass there, because I'm tired of seeing him fight with all this shit. Because, bro, he's annoying. That's about it.
All right. Well, obviously some strong opinions out of Chase on this one. I mean, look, as far as Chris Weidman goes, I mean, go back and watch the Atlantic City video that I put out about it. Trust me, I have a lot to say on there. And I mean, Weidman, for a guy who, at one point was Captain America. I forget what I was trying to get it for, but at some point I was talking about we need like a Captain America fighter, and I would have said Chris Weidman at the time, but I can't really put him in that spot anymore because after what happened in Atlantic City, it's like, dude, you've lost so many points with me. If he goes for the leg, there's nothing against it. So, I mean, do it to it if that's the route you want to take. Either way, I would like to see Eric Anders get this win, and I think that it's a winnable fight for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, obviously it's a winnable fight. Chris Weidman is 40 years old. This dude should have been known that there's nothing left in the tank for him that last fight. Like, the Brad Tavares one, I honestly think should have been a wake-up call. Like, oh, I can't compete anymore. Like, my leg is literally going to be an issue. So, there's really just not much more to say, unless he comes out here and does some cheap shit. Then he might win, but I don't see it. And then, actually, since the next fight coming up, I think is a good Captain America thing. Jim Miller, good enough.
I like that. There you go. All right. Well, Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. Damon having a tough go of it lately, considering that he's been making some rather poor decisions in the cage. If I recall his last fight, that was against Chepe Mariscal, I believe. I did not like the way that he was fighting that fight. And Jim Miller just continues on down the Iron Man path, whether he wins or loses. So is this going to be another one that he wins?
I remember when this fight, when it got announced, and like I looked at it just like puzzled, like, who asked for this? Who asked for Damon Jackson? Like, listen, after his first fight when I was hating, and he got the unanimous decision win against, I forget who it was, but then he lost to Shepe. I was rooting for Damon Jackson. I was like, oh, the leech is coming back. Now you're up against Jim Miller, and I'm like still at this time like thinking, again, who asked for this? Who asked for Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson? Like, I would have preferred either of them against anybody else on this card too. Like, just not against each other. I don't see how these like overlap. Like,
Well,
Jim Miller's at like a passing of the torch kind of phase in his career, I would say.
I think that that's an interesting point, though, because I believe that Jim Miller is almost in his own category at this point. Like, I think that he gets fights mainly because of the legacy that he has created for himself, and he needs someone to fight. So it's Damon Jackson today. You know what I mean? That's the way that I look at it with him. I think that the UFC kind of buys into the narrative that he is the Iron Man of the sport, and he's just going to continue until he don't want to continue anymore. And he's the guy that's reliable. He'll pick up the phone. So is this the ideal fight? No, but I do like seeing Jim Miller fight. So, I'm okay with it. I don't mind.
I think what makes it even weirder, my questions I still believe are warranted, but the fact that Damon Jackson is also going up to lightweight for this is so it seems to me they didn't have anybody to call on the lightweight list, or Damon Jackson was like, hey, I'm ready to go to lightweight, and they were like, boom, Jim Miller, we got you. So
that could have been. Yeah, that could be. I mean, it's, okay, well, if you want to go to another weight class, here's a good test for you to start out with it. I mean, at this point in Jim Miller's career, it would make sense that he'd be a testable figure. You know what I mean? Like somebody who makes sense for that slot. So Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with this fight, honestly. Again, these are the kind of fights that are giving the perception that this card is kind of weak, I guess. But I think it has potential to be not a terrible fight.
I th-
Hopefully,
I also think I don't know if it's a missed opportunity. Because I don't know where the fan base was at. I loved Jim Miller versus Bobby Green. I love to see the warrior spirit out of Jim Miller kind of deal, like him not giving up, although he probably should have. This one, I don't think I'm gonna get that. I'm not gonna see like what Jim Miller is really like made of, or like what made his legacy that. Like Damon Jackson isn't gonna put that pressure on Jim Miller. He's gonna just wrestle with him. So
yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I mean, if Jackson fights anywhere near like he's been fighting, it has potential to be pretty boring. I hope that Jim Miller makes him strike. That's what I'm hoping. You know.
yeah, Jim Miller's got some good wrestling. That is like his base kind of deal. So interesting enough, he might be able to stuff and keep it on the feet. And if he does, Damon Jackson, he is younger, but the striking is clearly like not great. Like he just got bombed out of existence by Shepe. Like
Well, and
so,
he was just fighting with like making low IQ moves in that fight. That was the thing that was most glaring to me. It's like, bro, you're going back to the well that is clearly dry. I mean, like you're time and time again going back to these takedown attempts that are not happening, and in the process, leaving yourself wide open to the side of the headshots, which were coming down in bunches. I mean, so it was just a poor conduction of the way that he was operating in the cage. So, I mean, Jim Miller has the opportunity to do the exact same thing if he gets into the exact same type of fight.
I want to make another point in Damon Jackson's defense. We want to talk about his IQ in the cage, but he clearly has a business mind. He has mind for money. It's not that he's just taking another fight right after he just had one. It's the fact that he just got knocked out 3 months ago in August, however many yes that is, and then the fact that he knew that he can't like take another fight against a heavy striker. So he's going to take a fight real soon after against somebody who has no threat to knock him out at this point. And I think that's really smart because then, you could have sat out like, oh, I need to recuperate because I just got knocked out, or I can take a fight that I'm definitely not going to get knocked out. That's just a free check in that book. He's just going to wrestle and do what he does in sparring sessions. Damon Jackson, I see it, brother. I see the money mind.
Well, and everybody knows that if you want a money fight, you call Jim Miller. So,
Yeah.
all
Oh,
right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
So the next one, I was going to
Yes,
say,
yeah,
this is
please.
the one that I just found out got canceled. Do you remember Lucas Almeida? Does that name ring a bell?
Yes. Why do I remember Lucas Almeida?
Because he was super impressive in the last time he fought. Like, who was it against? Oh, Timothy Kawumba.
Oh, yes, the guy who fought Timothy Kwama. Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was who was gonna fight David Onama, and he was the underdog. And I was thinking, oof, that's a good fucking dog because Lucas Almeida is chef's kiss on the feet. So, but yeah, not happening anymore. I guess they're gonna look for something, but I doubt that's gonna happen.
Yeah, we'll see if that TBA actually turns into somebody, but nobody yet. And then going a little bit farther down, just to go through the prelims a little bit here, the earlier prelims. Marcin Tybura versus Jonathan Diniz. This is the fight, of course, that was supposed to be, well, for Diniz at least, was supposed to be on Edmonton. That got rescheduled for this. He was supposed to be fighting Derek Lewis. That fight fell through, and he is now fighting Tybura for a higher potential ranking. So I am happy for him in that regard. What do you think is going to actually happen in this fight?
I think Denise is gonna knock him out. That sounds about good for me.
I mean, I don't see any reason why not. Tybura has been around for a very long time. He's seen a whole lot in the cage. I would think that the youth will probably trump the experience on this one.
Yeah. Even if it does make it to the second round, Denise, he knows that I just got to get to the second round. Then it's back to the feet, and I'll be able to put on my striking.
Sure. All right, Mickey Gall versus Ramiz Brahimaj. I hope that Mickey Gall is able to pull out a win at this point, considering that he's got to be in territory of getting cut, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
this is, it sucks too because his last fight, you saw that he really does fight with a lot of heart. Like he's one of those guys that does put it out there. It's just like in the last one, if I recall correctly, it was like he just started turning up a little bit too late in the fight, and it's like, bro, whether or not, whatever the case may be, you gotta win your fights, and 7-6 is That's not a good look.
Yeah, I remember that this was kind of a close one that I think was. I remember bashing Hafez, who actually is fighting under him on this card. That's who fought Mickey Gall last, and I remember not thinking Hafez was as good as he should be, especially to skate by on Mickey Gall. So we'll see. Both of them, I'm not really too sure if they'll put on a performance or not. And to go into that next one with Hafez and Oban Elliott, I said this a while ago. Oban Elliott in the hot seat. The Welsh fighters are on the hot seat.
Mhm.
We've seen them kicked out. We've seen them retired early. So Oban Elliott, you're coming off 2 L's, right? Oh, what? No, what? I could have swore this dude fucking lost. What am I doing?
I know Oban Elliott is the dude. He's on a win streak. Yeah, he's been winning.
Well, good for him. Good for him. No hot seat for you, brother. If you lose 2 more, then we'll talk again.
Now, that's the dude that was on the Contender Series talking about how amazing he was going to be and how he wanted to fight everybody when he barely squeaked by on the Contender Series.
I could have swore this dude, maybe because they were a unanimous decision. Maybe I don't think that these were unanimous, but either way.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, Basil Heifetz is a dude who I think looked pretty good, if I recall, in some of his more recent fights. So I think that this is a good matchup, honestly. And yeah, I mean, a loss to Jack Della, that obviously ages well. Basil Heifetz, the win over Mickey Gall, certainly, warranted, obviously, based on everything that was happening in that fight. So yeah, I like this. I think this is a good test on both sides. I'll slightly side with Heifetz, but Elliott has been winning fights, so there's potential for him to pull out another victory here.
Good deal.
And yeah, and then last but not least, Veronica Hardy versus Eduarda Mora. Mora looked really not impressive in the last fight, and actually both of her fights, right? I think that she's fought twice now, and I don't remember. Yeah, right, against Denise Gomes, and in the fight before that where she won, I guess she finished. So maybe I'm just misremembering that one, but I just remember in that last fight I was not impressed in the slightest. So
I think in that last fight, my notes for Moira is like she gassed out way too quick, especially for somebody who was 10-0. Like I was supposed to see like a killer.
Right.
And then she gassed out super quick and she had to rely on her wrestling, which ended up just being her holding her against the cage type of deal.
Mhm.
But I do think she should get this win. She's a lot bigger. Like when I imagine like remembering Moira fighting, she was a lot bigger than Denise Gomes, and Veronica Hardy's shorter than her. So I'm going to assume the size is going to be pretty glaring, and Moira should be able to wrestle her around. But good BJJ for Veronica and Venezuela. Shout out my Venezuelan babies out there. Like, gosh.
Chase is a fan.
I am.
All right. Well, so there you go. That is 309. Of course, we will be doing our individual watch-alongs for 309. You can watch me right here on the YAMMA channel. That is at YAMMA Show on YouTube. Also at YAMMA Show on Kick, Twitch, and Trovo. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
Obviously, they can find me on youtube.com/@CPSmalls, and I will be doing, like you said, watch-alongs. Maybe some predictions videos will come out. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, that's where I do only the chill stuff. It is at Creative Parts and PARTIN.
Only the chill stuff. I am at YAMMA Show on Twitter and on Instagram. This stream that you're watching right now, last week's fights, generally starts at 9, but if it doesn't start at 9, it will start later than that, and I will let you know start times on those platforms, so make sure you're following for that. I also just put a video out today, a little bit of a darker subject matter, so go into it knowing that, but if you end up watching, I appreciate that. Give it a like if you like it, dislike it if you don't, leave a comment, that always helps. Make sure you like this stream as well. This helps it get out to more people, in addition to the fine folks that we have had in the chat with us tonight. So, all of that being said, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the fights, and we will see you soon. Most importantly, fight on.